Hawa. Hey everyone. Thanks for being here once again. I got a little jammed up, but it's okay. They can't stop this. I don't know what was going on. It wasn't working at all, but they gave me a chance to start fresh and I do it right, and it came out a little better. Just let me get a one. Make sure you guys can hear me. Make sure they ain't with that hijack still, trying to jam us up. Can I get a one if you hear the music? Can I get a one if you can hear me? Can I get a one? Let's... Awesome. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do this live. I was gonna pre-record it, but that might take me a little longer to edit. So I just want to say much love and respect to everybody who's out there supporting, tuning in all the time, motivating. All right, much love to Vaso Breeze for the beats. Once again, soundtrack produced by Vaso Breeze. Much love and respect, brother. Thanks for the beats. Yeah. All right, let's get this started. All right. Much love and respect to everybody tuned in. Thanks for being here. All right. Let me just get this going. Vaso Breeze on the beats. All right. Let's get to the info. Much love and respect to everybody. Seems we got a good audience. So yeah, long story. I just wanted to read this book to you guys today. Pretty good book. In Search of the Black Dutch. I know you guys probably heard that term. I know you guys know a lot of that history with that term. But before we begin with that book, I just wanted to go over some information we've already gone over in the past. just to refresh, you know, how we got to this point, you know, how we get a better understanding of the Black Dutch. And right here, I got a screenshot of part 4 of Nations of the World. This series, it says the Dutch, Moorish, and Sephardic Atlantic trade. You guys remember? What did we find out? Even before this, we know that, as it says here, the notion that in previous centuries Jews were considered to be black or seen as blacks has gained broad acceptance in scholarly discourse on the Jewish body since the early 1990s. The present article considers the notion analytically and then examines some of the evidence provided to support it. Much of this evidence does not stand critical examination. Therefore, arguably, the notion of Jewish blackness should be reconsidered, meaning nobody has debunked it. Nobody has debunked it. All right. So, you know, you should consider it. We showed a lot of sources, you know. Why am I reminding everybody of this? Because we're talking about the Sephardic Jews. Who's the Sephardic Jews? It says here, this is part 4 still, Nations of the World. Make sure to catch the whole video. We was live that day. You can see the live chat from that day. It says here, this is the Natural History of Man, 3rd edition, volume 1. And this is on page 132. It says, the Jews of Portugal are very dark. All right. Jews, as it is well known, have been spread from early times through many countries in the eastern parts of Asia. All right. So again, letting us know there, the Jews of Portugal are very dark. All right. Right here, this is another book, The Noted Impressions of the Jews in the Synagogue of Amsterdam by William Brereton. It says here, when William Brereton jotted down his impressions of the Jews in the synagogue in Amsterdam, all right, Amsterdam, right, what's that? Holland, Netherlands, Dutch, right, Amsterdam in 1635, 1600s. He noted that the Jewish men are most black. The Jewish men are most what? So-called black. The Jewish men are so-called black. He's saying. All right. So, I lost you guys 1 second. Okay. All right, Visual Breeze, carry it on. Visual Breeze killing it. Yo, Kyo, what's up? Pura vida, brother. Pura vida to everybody out there. Pura vida, pure life. Pure life. Conclusion, Sephardic Jews of old were reputed as being black. All right, much shout out to Genesis 49ers for his video on that. The Sephardic Jews were sold as slaves and expelled from Spain and Portugal. Did you know that? A lot of these people were eventually called Latinos. A lot of these people eventually ended up in Jamaica and the West Indies, Española, Puerto Rico, all right, as known as Black Latinos or Spanish auxiliaries. The auxiliaries, they were helping, you know, they were coming to help. The Sephardic Jews were sold as slaves and expelled from Spain and Portugal. Their descendants were purported to be black. They had various. Let me know if the music's too loud. Sometimes it gets a little loud. All right. So it's here, continued, they had various communities in the New World, in the Americas, which was originally black, so-called black, until a large influx of white, German, and Eastern Jews immigrated into America. Jews left Brazil and went to New Amsterdam, New York. The early Sephardic Jews of the 15th, 16th, and 17th century were in fact so-called black. All right. We've been able to conclude, show a lot of references and sources to that. All right, in case you haven't seen the other previous videos to this. Again, this is just a recap, just a little recap. It says here, in the system of geography or a descriptive historical and philosophical view, it says the Jews, that singular people, have been called into the assistance of the advocates of their influence of climate. All right, now down here it says the English Jew is white, the Portuguese Jew is Swarty, so-called black. The Portuguese, right? Iberian Moor, right? Jew, Swarti, the Iberian Jew, olive, the American Jew, olive, and the Arabian Jew, copper colored. All right, copper colored. What's this? This is part 5, Nations of the World, Sephardic Dutch Huguenot Merchants, Atlantic Trade Network. Now, let's not forget what we've gone over. So, these Sephardic Jews, these people of color, Moorish, Moriscos, all these people had the trade on lockdown. They were the merchants. They were the ones who had the Silk Roads, the Silk Trade from even ancient times. They continued that through colonial times, 1600s, 1700s. Even as they were getting expelled from Spain and Portugal, they still had their networks and their families all over the place in different ports, right? The port Jews. Remember, let's not forget that this book is an example. Says here the exodus from Brazil and the arrival in New Amsterdam of the Jewish Pilgrim Fathers. So they had settled all down there in French Guiana and Brazil for a while until the Catholics came into town. They had to flee again. Remember, the Catholics, we're not talking about white people, we're talking about just religion, an empire. The Catholic Empire, they were the ones who expelled the Sephardic Jews and the Moors from Spain. All right, it wasn't about color, because even Queen Ferdinand and his wife Isabella, as Asir the Duke of Tears told us already, these people were black too, so-called black too. He said they were pork-eating black. That's what he called them. That's his words, not mine. All right. So, yeah, they were so swarty. Yeah, all these people were so swarty. The exodus from Brazil and the arrival to New Amsterdam. So what happened to these Jews? They ended up in Holland, right? Holland, and then what did they become there? Dutch, right? Dutch. This is the Black Dutch video, right? Remember that. Let's just pay attention. All right. Now this is the book History of the Conquest of Spain by the Arab Moors. This is again, well, I talked about this in my Huguenot video and also on this video, part 5, the Nations of the World. And they were talking about how, Columbus, his fleet was all mostly Moorish. He was Moorish. He has Moorish in his blood too. They were telling you in this book. He's letting you know that after the Sephardic Jews, well, not him, but the author of this book, Sephardic Jews and the Muslim Moors got expelled. They were running away, abhorring the Roman Catholic persecutions, it says here, and they became known as Huguenots in France. All right, Moors became known as Huguenots, and that of these many emigrated at a later date to South Carolina. All right, South Carolina. If you guys remember the South Carolina video, that was one of the biggest places where they exported American Indians. There was more Indians being exported than any so-called Negro or so-called African being imported. All right, in South Carolina. All right, part 4, Nations of the World, just to remind you. All right, sugar, right? Sugar. Who was the ones handling the sugar, creating all these plantations? It says sugar was first produced in Asia. It said, what Asia? What Asia? The farthest East Asia? We had sugar here in ancient times. You think we didn't? And the European Crusaders became acquainted with it. So who? The Arabs? Yeah. They knew where the promised land was. These Arabs. They knew where to get the sugar. But as late as the beginning of the 15th century, sugar was so expensive in Europe that it was sold only in the pharmacies for medical purposes. It says here in 1420, Portugal transplanted sugar cane from Sicily to Madeira, discovered in the 1400s. All right, so what did they do? They started mass producing in the Madeira Islands. All right, I got a future video of whose family was running this Madeira Islands. All right, his name is, what was his name again? Let me see, Salvador Fernandez Sarco, aka Columbus. All right, that island's sugar industry was so successful that by the end of the 15th century, 150 sugar factories had been established. 150 sugar factories. Who? Portuguese. These are Sephardic Jews and merchants, Moorish people, starting the whole sugar plantation. They learned this from, this was already being done in ancient times, and before that in Africa. There was plantation systems there in Africa already being established, and the whole of cruel slavery and all that. We're gonna see where it really originated, who was really doing that back in the day, where they get the idea of plantation systems and all that, So I got brothers from Africa letting me know, giving me the drop. a whole other history we don't even know about. All right, future videos. It's a lot to learn still. Anybody who says they got to figure it out, nobody got to figure it out. We're still learning. All of us are still learning. All right. Anybody bored, you can just leave. Moderators, you can help them. If they bored, just let them out. In 1493, possibly even earlier, the Portuguese transplanted sugarcane from Madeira to the islands of Sao Tome and the Gulf of Guinea off the west coast of Africa. So who's these Portuguese in the 1490s and the ships and everything? These are, again, Sephardic Jews handling the trade. These are people of color. These ain't white people establishing plantations. They also began to manufacture sugar on that island. Sao Tome harbored convicts and exiled Jews who had refused to recant their Judaism, all right? Who were they enslaving and sending over there to work? It wasn't no Africans. It was harbored convicts and exiled Jews. They were sent to work the plantations. Like Genesis 49 said in his conclusions, they were being enslaved and sent to the colonies too. It wasn't just a free ride for all of them. All right? We're talking about real Middle Passages here, real enslavement. This has nothing to do with Kunta Kinte. Real history. The Jews planted sugarcane there on a large scale, established many sugar mills, employing at times as many as 3,000 Negro slaves. Who's these so-called Negro slaves? All right, let's check each individual's genealogy. Let's not generalize. In 1522, Sao Tome had 60 sugar factories. All right, so this is before they started colonizing the Americas. All right, and so they brought this whole system over with them. I don't know if you guys remember, we were reading before in one of my videos how there was a trade treaty with Morocco and England before King James took over, and they said, let's split the Americas. You guys can have the Caribbean, the hot places, they told Morocco, and England said, we'll have the northern parts, and we'll establish our sugar there or our plantations there, and you guys do it in the Caribbean. All right, this is before King James. All right, so let's not forget, again, I'm just recapping what we've gone over before, what's going on before we get into, let's not forget. The Jews in the sugar industry of colonial Brazil. So again, they went from Sicily, Italy. We already know we read the other day that the Italians were very swarthy too, right? The indigenous Italians were swarthy. So Sicily, right? The Jews in the sugar industry of colonial Brazil. That was all Iberia, the Mediterranean. You already know. The Jews in the sugar industry of colonial Brazil. Jewish Social Studies, Volume 18. Check it out. We read from this too in this video. Again, this was part 4, Nations of the World. This is from part 5, Nations of the World, Sephardic Dutch Huguenot Merchants Atlantic Trade Network. So Huguenot merchants and the Protestant International in the 17th century, 16th century, right? Again, remember who the Huguenots? Moors who had settled in France became known as Huguenots. We're going to get a lot more of that, but we had all the proof in all these videos if you want to go back to it, if you're still not understanding that part. And what do they have to do with Protestants and Dutch? What do Dutch have to do with Protestants? What do the Sephardic and Moorish people have to do with Protestantism or being labeled new Christians or being called crypto? Why are they crypto? Why are they secret? And why don't they want to practice their, new religion? Who are they really? And what are they protesting, these Protestants? Who are they really protesting? Remember, this is about empires, not about skin color. Nations and empires. Part 4, Nations of the World. Communities of Port Jews in their context in the Dutch Atlantic world. All right, the Dutch Atlantic world. Who's the Black Dutch? This is from Jewish History, Volume 20. All right, we were able to read from this in that video. Let's do a movie. Let's do a movie. I'm actually movie producer. I do filming too. I do production on the side. Something I do, working on too. Was working on a movie last year actually. We had to stop production because of the COVID thing, but we were working on it. But thanks for everybody tuned in. Again, this is just a recap. This is just a recap of some of the information we've gone over. Breeze 3000. Vaso Breeze with the beats, yo. Soundtrack produced by Vaso Breeze. Much love and respect, brother. Shine bright, shine bright. Marrano and Sephardic Jews, it says here, permanent Jewish life in Amsterdam began with the arrival of pockets of Marrano and Sephardic Jews. At the end of the 16th and beginning of the 17th century, the first chief rabbi was Rabbi Uri Levi. Many Sephardi Jews from the Iberian Peninsula had been expelled from Spain in the 1492 after the fall of Muslim Granada. Those that moved to Portugal first to leave in 1497, where they were given the choice between conversion to Catholicism or death penalty on the grounds of heresy. All right, remember, we're talking about people of color here. We ain't talking about Ashkenazi or what you think of a person from the Middle East over there in Israel. Not quite like that. From 1497, others remained in the Iberian Peninsula practicing Judaism secretly in their homes. The newly independent Dutch provinces provided an ideal opportunity for these crypto Jews to reestablish themselves and practice their religion openly, and they migrated, most notably to Amsterdam. Where? Amsterdam. Who's the Black Dutch? Collectively, they brought economic growth and influence to the city as they established an international trading hub in Amsterdam. During the 17th century, right when the Huguenots also doing the same thing, also in the same place, dealing with the same people. Who's the Huguenots? Are the Curiel family, namely Geronimo Nunez da Costa. All right, da Costa. We got the Da Costas genealogy in America. They were being labeled mulattoes, Irish mulattoes, but they were really Huguenots coming in through Ireland. French Huguenots coming in through Ireland, but they were really from Spain, Da Costa, Portuguese. You see? The son of Jacob Curiel. Curiel was the single largest financial contributor to the building of the Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam. All right, let's not forget what we've gone over. Again, this is part 5 of Nations of the World, Sephardic Dutch Huguenot Merchants Atlantic Trade Network, a real Atlantic trade network, which included, yes, people, but not how we thought it did. All right, the Jews and Moors in Spain. Who was all these pirates? Who's the mariners, right? I learned that from you guys. Who was in the seas? Who was the first navigators? Who's mooring the ships? I learned that from you guys. Let's not forget that. So that included during colonial times too. Their services, their trade network, their connections was very much needed during those colonial times. We can't push this under the rug. We can't look the other way. We just got to embrace it. All the history, all of it. Yeah, Jeremiah. Much love and respect, brother. You already know. Part 4, Nations of the World. It says here, first settled by the French in 1604. What French? French Guiana was captured several years later by Dutch authorities. Jews arrived in French Guiana by way of the Dutch West India Company. Who brought the Jews? Who brought the Jews to Guiana in ships? A lot of these people were indentured servants, slaves, all that. Poor people, undesirables. Who brought them over? The Dutch West India Company. They didn't go to Africa to bring these people. What was the real reason for the Dutch West India and East India Company? You think it was to grab African slaves? That's a fake story. They were really using these ships for something else. All right? The Dutch relied on the Jewish settlers to carry out their plans. What Dutch? You mean the same people, right? Sephardic Jews relied on their other brethren, Sephardic Jews or Jewish settlers, to carry out their plans and settle the newly claimed colony. Their objective was to attract Jewish farmers and merchants. Who's the merchants? Experienced in managing tropical products. They were experienced in managing what? Sugar. Tropical products. They were experienced in managing sugar plantations. Who? The Sephardic Jews, Moors. They was doing this in North Africa way before they came to America. We read that already. On September 12, 1659, a group of Portuguese Jews first arrived in French Guiana from Brazil. So remember, they were being kicked out of Brazil. They had gone there. Some went to French Guiana, some ended back in New Amsterdam, some went to Curaçao, some went to Barbados, and so on to Jamaica, and so on and so on. Eventually arriving to New York, some of them, South Carolina, Virginia. The company appointed David Nazi, a Brazilian refugee, patron of an exclusive Jewish settlement on the western side of the island of Cayenne, an area called Remir of Irmide. All right? We don't need to have anybody try to prove anything wrong. We got our truth and we got our sources. Most importantly is your inner truth. We shouldn't care what others think. A lot of people have the choice right now, the blue pill or the red pill. Can't force everybody to want to get this information if they don't care about it. The real ones will come to it. Don't waste your time on the ones who don't. Waste your time on the ones who actually are looking for this information. And we can probably get this out there, you know, with love. Not trying to force this on anybody, you know. The Huguenots, the first settlers in the province of New York. Huguenots, huh? Who's the Huguenots? Let's not forget who's the Huguenots. And some people on their platforms are like, who cares about the Huguenots? That ain't important. That ain't important. I don't know Huguenot. I don't know no Huguenot. That's what he thinks. He don't know no Huguenot. He need to check his genealogy. You know? Because many of you have this genealogy. I've done so many people's genealogies so far, and I keep finding Huguenots. Let the people who I've done their genealogy speak for themselves. And this ain't about trying to make anybody a Huguenot. Whatever's on your line is in your line. I didn't do that. That wasn't me. Your past is your ancestry. That's your history. It's Huguenots. I just like Huguenot. So, we're talking about Benedict Spinoza, a Dutch Jew. He was labeled a Dutch Jew, Benedict Spinoza. It says here, in Calera's day, there were many persons still living at the Hague who had been well acquainted with Spinoza. They spoke of him as a man of middle in height and slenderly built. His features were regular, his forehead broad and high, his eyes dark, large, and lustrous, his eyebrows black and bushy, his hair of the same hue, long and curling, and his complexion so swarthy. The whole physiognomy unmistakably proclaiming descent from the Jews of the southern peninsula. Remember what we got in the beginning of this video. The Jews of this southern peninsula, Spain and Portugal, were very dark skinned. Very. And their descendants became known as what? So-called black, like Genesis 49 told you and showed you. All right. The prevailing expression of the face, judging from the engraved portraits given by Dr. Pallas in his edition of the philosopher's writing, and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, Benedict Spinoza, they wouldn't tell you he's a so-called black man in history. And right here, I just got a screenshot of Luisa da Costa, who's from Ireland, right? And it says she's a mulatto born in Ireland. Now you tell me what that means. A mulatto born in Ireland. The Sephardic Morisco free people of color, plantation owners of South Carolina, Huguenot servitude. That's a great video. If you haven't seen that video, again, we've gone over a lot of information. A lot of information just to, you know, be able to, you know, get to our conclusions, try to correct history, try to understand it a little better. The Jews of South Carolina from the earliest settlements to the end of the American Revolution. All right, so we're not talking about what we think of like today, Middle Eastern Israeli Jews, Sephardic Jews, Moorish Sephardic Jews. And right here, we got a screenshot of William da Costa. And they're labeled, as you see, race M is mulatto. This is from the 1850 United States Federal Census for William da Costa. All right. This is from Who Are the Huguenots? My video, Acculturation Crypto Conversos Moriscos. All right, we had a great time that day. This is a 5-hour video. You know, a lot of information was put forth that day. Make sure you catch that if you haven't seen it. Rewatch it a couple times. Even I, after watching it myself, rewatching it, I'm like, wow, that's so much info. I have to go back to it to restudy things, you know? So doing these videos helps all of us, just to get a recap for the test, no, sir, for the pop quiz. The expulsion of the Moriscos from Spain did not pass unnoticed among those living at the time, not only in Muslim countries, but also in Christian ones like France, which would come to play a very unwillingly secondary role in the tragedy. Networks created by the exposure said it would be worthwhile to explore more fully the following topics: conversos of Jewish origin who helped Moriscos to take their property in secret out of the country and into France, Morisco networks in France both before and after the expulsion, collaboration between Moriscos and conversos, and between Moriscos and Protestants. Moriscos and Protestants, who? Huguenots? Why are they all these people collaborating? Because it's the same people. And remarkable individual Moriscos. These are the lines of inquiry that will be most fruitful for the history of the Moriscos in France. The Moriscos. What is a Morisco? Pop quiz. Who knows what a Morisco is? Who's been keeping track? Who's been studying? A Morisco is just like a Morano. It's just a Muslim who became a Christian. Crypto. A Muslim known as a Christian because he's hiding. That's a Morisco. Provincial rebellion, Moriscos and Huguenots. All right, so I'm not sure what the book this is, but get the video because I always show the cover of the books and what I'm reading from. It says, as we have previously seen, Spain's Moorish Christians were a separate people, ethnic community, or nation. A term contemporaries used of them, forever divided from the old Christians among whom they lived. What set them apart was their Islamic heritage and common origin. Their Islamic heritage. Settled mainly in Valencia and Granada, they constituted in the latter province a compact minority. All one can say about colonialism, no matter in what country and at which period Brown has served. And I think he's going to say they were there. They were there. All right, so Moriscos and Huguenots. Moriscos and Huguenots. Again, this from the video, Who Are the Huguenots? We're just doing a little recap, quick little recap. In 1624, the West Indies Company made the decision to plant colonies in North America. Not surprisingly, given what we have already seen of the English strategy, the company used Sephardims as antagonists in the first onslaught. All right, who they use? Who they use? Oh, I thought it was Africans they were using. They used Sephardims. The earliest settlers were Walloons, Protestant refugees from southern Netherlands. Dutch? Netherlands? Who? Walloons? Protestant Huguenots? These are the so-called Black Dutch? Are you talking about a Black Dutch? Who displayed willingness to risk wives and children towards emigration, as we have witnessed happening repeatedly from Roanoke to Jamestown, from Plymouth Rock to Boston, to the shores of South Carolina and Maryland. Former Sephardim and Moors now surfacing in various hues of Protestantism. Now what? Now they're now they're hiding under Protestantism, or hues of various hues of Protestantism. Were placed aboard ships and transported from Western Europe to North America on ships. And I got a lot of people telling me, well, this doesn't fit the whatchamacallit, the curses of the Jews. Who was brought on ships? Well, how much of these people were brought on ships? We're talking about a real Middle Passage. We're talking about a real Middle Passage. You're talking about Deuteronomy 28. You gotta talk about the whole chapter, not just the last verse. If you're gonna quote that to me. You gotta have full understanding what you're saying when you're gonna quote that. Because we ain't into religions, we're into history here. Real history, real genealogy. You know? Amaru Khan. Like I said in my recent one, Cuetar and Chorotega, Sephardic, Moorish, and Tolteca. My queen is from Jamaica. And all of us, most of us are from Jacob. I know my genealogy. This ain't Bible stories. All of these incumbent, ostensibly Dutch settlers received free passage and an allotment of land. What? They got what? All these people got what? All these ostensibly Dutch settlers, right? They're calling them Dutch settlers now. They just said they were French Huguenots and Walloons and Sephardic and Moors. All of a sudden, they're just Dutch settlers, right? They just became Dutch settlers. Forget the whole genealogy. And then what happened 200-300 years go by, they become white people. This whole time, we thought these were white people, so-called white people. Yeah, we ain't talking about fairy tales here. We're talking about real history. All right? Again, all these incoming ostensibly Dutch settlers receive free passage and an allotment of land. They got land to cultivate for their own usage. They needed people to work these, right? These lands. Didn't they need people? Who do they think they used? Conscripts were permitted freedom of conscience in religious matters so long as the public aspect of religious worship adhered to the Reformed Protestant practice of the Netherlands. All right. This, of course, left the way clear for continuation of Judaic and Islamic practices in the privacy of their homes. In the privacy of their homes. 200-300 years go by, you forgot who you are. Now you just want to be one thing. Now you just want to be one thing. I'm just one thing. Well, I don't care about all that. We the ancient ones. Okay, well, I guess. Well, then we all the ancient ones then. If it's like that, if you want to just generalize. You know, I know I'm being pain with some people, but you know, this is just, you know, when you come with hijack and when you come with your opinions and comments without sources, you know, I don't know what else to tell you. You know, because there's a real genealogy out there, not just one. Many grandmas, not just one grandma. Many grandfathers. Note that reoccurrence of London and Amsterdam firms in a combination again of Huguenot, English, and Dutch commercial partners. Clearly, despite language and geographic differences, there was an overreaching ethnic bond that permitted these relationships to be established and maintained. All right, did you understand that? There was again these commercial partners. Who? These Huguenots, these English, these Dutch, so-called Dutch, these English, so-called English, these so-called Huguenots. Even though they didn't speak the same language, what was going on? There was some kind of ethnic bond there. Ethnic bond that permitted these relationships to be established and maintained. Similarly, Rodrigo Pacheco, a Spanish crypto Jew, and James Alexander, a Scottish crypto Jew, formed a joint venture and worked together. You see, coming together. Confederation, confederate, coming together, confederate. Huguenot, what does Huguenot mean? We went over the etymology. A confederation and coming together. During the 1730s, they were friendly rivals aiming to capture a prominent dry goods position in the New York market. They regularly discussed their cargoes according to Madsen's research. Rice last year did very well at London, but prices had been declining and it would sell better at Lisbon. Pacheco predicted in 1732. All right, so they were helping each other out. All right, they were helping each other out. Both academic studies and informal family histories attest to many of the Spanish and Portuguese colonists in Central and South America, Mexico, and the Caribbean were conversos and moriscos. And I can confirm this because I have that in my genealogy. I did my genealogy and I do have Sephardic Moorish people in my genealogy. The Spaniards and the Portuguese who were coming to Costa Rica, these were Sephardic Jews. I got the whole, they got their emblems, they got the whole history. All right. on top of my indigenous genealogy and family, King Garavito and the Queen Chorotega. We got to embrace all our lines. All right? Ain't no running away from it. Although they might appear to be good Catholic Christians on the surface, even though we thought they were Catholic Christians on the surface, they were in reality what? Crypto Jews and crypto Muslims. Secret Jews and secret Muslims. That's who came to Costa Rica and conquered as conquistadors and enslaved my other genealogy, my other ancestors. Like Khan Drop be saying, much love to Khan Drop, 42 the Drop Radio, a more on more war. All right, it's a full story to be told here, to be researched, to be studied. This ain't personal feelings, and this ain't just about reading, you know, Bibles. It's about everything. The truth is inside you. It's all inside you. You are the book. Scattered around the world, that means something. If you into that and you really understand that. So what was really going on? Again, secret Jews and secret Muslims. They practiced the traditions of Judaism and Islam in the privacy of their own homes, sometimes in small de facto communities or intermarried family groups. Both Judaic and Islamic law excused this behavior on grounds that such temporizers were constrained to submit to political pressures to save life and property. They had to do it. All right. So they allowed them. They gave them they said, okay, you guys can do it because, to save your lives. Make some money over there with the plantations, enslave these other people, make them work. Yeah, set up some sugar plantations. Yeah, don't worry, just pay us back. Just send all that money to us. We'll let you guys be cryptos. We'll let you guys be cryptos over there. We won't murder you, but make us that money. You got the whole trade going. You already got the whole port on lockdown. The earliest martyrs of the commandment of the Torah, requiring Jews to declare themselves as separate and set apart from other people, were called anusum, forced ones. The Inquisition rolled out a dragnet complete with tip sheets, rewards, and public spectacles. The feared auto de fe. Although the bulk of the refugees fled to North African, Ottoman, or Turkish lands and Levant, thousands of others sought safety in France. Thousands went to France. It wasn't just Ottoman. They made us think that all these people ended up in North Africa. That's what they wanted us to think. And there was a very small percentage that went to France. No, it wasn't like that. Show me the numbers. Please show me the numbers. Show me the numbers. As Protestantism swept across Western Europe, many of these Jewish conversos and Moriscos became often only outwardly Protestant. What? They became what? Who? These Jewish conversos and Moriscos, Muslim Moors, Moriscos, Muslim Moors, became outwardly what? Protestant. Who's the Protestants? Who's the Huguenots? Who's the Black Dutch? Hussites, Anabaptist. All right, so it's going to get deep right here. It says, swelling the ranks of the dissenters. Some even provided leaders for what? For the Huguenots, for the Hussites, for the Anabaptists, the Baptists, the Calvinists, the German Reformed Walloons, the Mennonites, the Dunkers, the Quakers, the Puritans, and the Presbyterians. You see who all these people really were? Who was really starting all these religions? Why? A form of Christianity. Why weren't they just Catholics? Because they weren't Catholics, right? What is this form of Christianity? Separate from the Catholic Empire. Who was really doing this? And why did they have to do this? All right? They brought the cross to you. They brought Jesus, right? These same people who were not even practicing that. They were only practicing that what? Outwardly, not in the privacy of their homes. In agreement with crypto-Jewish practice, endogamy among the Massachusetts Quaker settlers was carried to extremes. In one case, Pestana reports 6 intermarried families accounted for fully 2/3 of the more than 500 people known to have been members of the Salem monthly meeting. Among these congregants were Benjamin Bagnall, Sarah Flood, Bassett, and the Estes family. The Estes all bear Sephardic surnames. A listing of the early settlers in Salem is given in Appendix F. These several would appear to be French Huguenot or Sephardic. So who was these people burning the witches, right? There was what was going on in Salem up there, right? And who were they burning? Who did they burn? Tituba. Who was Tituba? She was an Arawak from South America. She had been taken from South America, brought to Barbados, from there brought all the way up to Salem. She was the main witch in the Salem witch trials. And who was most of these people? Most of them bear Sephardic surnames. You can look at the Appendix F. For example, John Abbey, Aramaic, fathers, Abby, Abba, right? Abba. You guys know that. John Barrow, Baruch. Anglicized, remember, they anglicized the names. Edward Beauchamp, Roger Conant, Jeffrey Etsy, Thomas Gardner, Jardin, Edward Giles, Thomas Goldthwaite, Robert Goodell, Henry Herrick, John Horn, after the Jewish shofar, the horn, right? Alice Ingersoll, George Jacobs, Elisha Keeby, Richard Ober, Samuel Paris or Perez, Fares, one of the sons of Judah and Tamar, right? One of the sons of Judah and Tamar. Tamar was an Egyptian, Judah. This is real history. You think it's just Bible stories? Well, stay tuned because I got a lot of good videos coming. All right? Who ended up in Ireland? Why did these people end up as kings and queens? Scotland, Ireland, England. Ferez. Who's Ferez? Daniel Ray, Richard Raymond, John Swassey, John Sweet for sugar or candy. A Jewish Arab monopoly. What sweet? The sugar plantations, the sugar canes, right? We picture like white slave masters whipping, Africans. But who had the sugar monopoly? Jewish Arab people. John Simmons, and Abraham Temple. I know a lot of this is hard for, some people to digest. But we've gone over this info before, that's why it's there. Make sure you go back to these videos, absorb the whole info from the beginning of the video. Again, this is a 5-hour video, just this Huguenot video alone. 5 hours of pure info, pure sources. I tell you, I show you the source. We're not just here talking for 5 hours, slandering people, talking bad about people. This is real info. And this is, again, this ain't personal. It's just history. Immigration patterns in Virginia after 1624 suggests an even stronger picture of the Sephardic and Morisco presence. The aptly named Abraham, leaving London in 1635, had on board Walter Piggott, Henry Dubell, Alexander Simmons, and Simon Farrell. The David, that same year, carried Robert Alsop, Robert Baron, and Gurit Levite. Lovett is Levite. Then anglicized. The Bonaventure, listed as passengers, among others, Basil, Greek Basil, Book, Hebrew anagram, Robert Perry, James Macer, and Thomas Hyatt, Arabic Hebrew for tailor. Arabic Hebrew for what? Tailor. Each bearing a Sephardic surname. More and more persons of likely Sephardic and Morisco descent continue to arrive. They continue to arrive. Where? In Virginia, 1600, they continue to arrive. Remember that in Virginia, the word white didn't exist until after the 1670s. Again, this is 1624, passenger list. 1635, passenger list. They what? Sephardic and Morisco descent, they continue to arrive. The Elizabeth in 1635 of London carried John Bagby, George Travis, and Ellen Shore, Hebrew Shore, bull, related to the name Joseph. The Globe, also in 1635, brought Robert Copen, diminutive of Jacob, William Savoy, Michael Hames, and Anne Levians, which seem obvious enough not to call for comment. It's obvious, right? Levi. And the Alice had on board Robert Hagar. Who's Hagar? Hagara, and Sophia Rodriguez. In 1700, several boatloads, again, in the 1700s, several boatloads, call it what you want, say this doesn't fit, your conjecture, anything aside from what it doesn't specify in that verse who these people in the ships were going to be. You don't know if a lot of these so-called Huguenots could be some of those people's genealogy. You never know if these could include and what you believe is an Israelite. But again, this is a real Middle Passage. Several boatloads of Huguenot refugees arrived in Virginia from England. Several boatloads. Wait a minute. Where's all the Africans coming in? So we got all these records of these ships, right? So where's the ships that were coming in from Africa? Where's those records? The name of the ship and all that. Where's all that? Because it seems that they were recording all this stuff. Many of these persons were likely of Sephardic and Morisco ancestry. These Huguenots, again, they're what? Sephardic and Morisco ancestry. Huguenots. In 1620, the Virginia colony had another new governor, Francis Wyatt, Arabic surname, Wyatt. All right? The Virginia governor in 1620, all right? He was Arabic. He was a Muslim, Francis Wyatt, who put a premium on obtaining female settlers. Economic efforts included timber production, wineries, and ironworks and glass manufacture. Mulberry trees were planted to foster silkworms and silk making. All these industries were ones in which Sephardic Jews, Moriscos, and Ottoman Turks excelled. Again, all these industries were who was running these industries? Sephardic Jews, Moriscos, and Ottoman Turks excelled. This is real history. Sericulture in particular was a secret art, jealously guarded and known only to them. It was only known by them, so they had the monopoly. The flight of Huguenots from Catholic France beginning about 1575 brought silk manufacturing to England, so that by the end of the 17th century, Huguenots numbered as high as 80,000 in London. Who's the Huguenots in London? Many of them were silk weavers or skilled craftsmen in other textile arts in Shoreditch and Spitalfields. Only 2 or 3 generations removed from being Spanish or Italian Jews. And again, we go to the beginning of this presentation. These people were considered what? So-called black, very dark-skinned, swarthy. There were only 2 or 3 generations removed from them. The Constitution of the Virginia Company was rewritten in 1621, named now as proprietors were, and it probably has a whole lot of Sephardic and Morisco surnames there. And we went over it. Make sure to catch the video. Although the bulk of the refugees fled to North African Ottoman Turkish lands in the Levant, thousands of others sought safety in France and the Low Countries. Okay, again, we got this screenshot already. Huguenots, South Carolina. This crypto-Jewish element in the Carolinas, large French population, goes back to the first pogroms against Spanish and French Jews in the 1380s and 1390s. Even before this, however, events had the effect of throwing 2 groups together. The union of the 2 were particularly strong in the Spanish marshes and southwest of France. All right. Here by Babylonian exilar Machir William of Toulouse. Machir had founded a Jewish principality under Charlemagne under the year 770. That's how old this history goes back. Evidently, many other Jewish institutions and practices gradually went underground at the same time in southern France. Crypto-Jewish expert Abraham Lavender proposes that many Huguenots began as Jews. Again, many Huguenots began as what? Jews? Sephardic Jews. While Cecil Ruff, the chronicler of the Spanish Inquisition, writes that a large number started out as Muslim Moors. Muslim Moors. Huguenots began as Jews and Muslim Moors. Muslim Moors. Chameleons. Their fortunes were variable. Jews had temporarily returned to France beginning in 1361 at the invitation of Charles V, although they were expelled by his Catholic-leaning successor in 1394. All right, make sure to catch the whole Huguenot video if you haven't seen it. Really good info there. Around 400, well, let's go back up here. Oh yeah, around 400 Huguenots immigrated to New York around 1680. Huguenots, who were they? Muslim Moors, remember. Let's not forget this. So let's just put this in context, right? Around 400 Muslim Moors immigrated to New York around 1680. Numbering among them were Francois Bouquet, Joshua David, Elie Boudinot, whose grandson would be elected the president of the First Continental Congress, all right? And whose mother was Marie Suede, example, Suedo, or Marans, Aunis France, Suzanne Papin or Papo, Andrew Laurent, Marie Luca, John Magnan, Jacob Radier, Jael Artnott, and the Tangi from Tangier, Lafon and Gracilia families. Augusta J was a very successful merchant from that crypto-Jewish stronghold, La Rochelle, France, which lent its name to New Rochelle, north of New York. Like K Bay, Gimbal, Hamel, and V, the letter J was probably adopted as an expedient Kinui or secular name. The original Shem HaKodesh or sacred name could have been Judah or Jacob. All right. Labari knows that it was the Huguenots who brought the Jewish Moorish craft of silverwork into Massachusetts in 1686. So why did Huguenots again know this Jewish Moorish craft if they're not Jewish Moorish? Remember, these people dominated that stuff and they didn't share it with others. Huguenots, same people. So the Huguenots, who were Jewish Moorish people, brought this to Massachusetts, craft of silverworking. In 1686, okay? 1686. Among the best known were Jeremiah Dumas, John Connie, and Paul Revere. Paul Revere, yes, remember, we've already gone over this. Paul Revere's family were Huguenots. Yes, so-called black man. Yes, Paul Revere. We're gonna prove it. We're gonna prove this. I guarantee it. But we know he was a Huguenot, so we already know. Use your logic. All three of these bear French Sephardic surnames. Another culturally prominent settler was Nathaniel Ames, medieval English Jewish surname from Amos, who simultaneously practiced medicine, ran a tavern, and published an almanac. Even the man with whom Paul Revere wrote to warn the British arrival for war in 1775 bore a Sephardic surname. Dawes, as already pointed out, the derivative of David. Dawes, the Dawes roll? You mean the David roll? The Dawes roll, the David roll? Sephardic surname, Dawes. Sephardic, Moorish Sephardic surname, the Dawes roll, the David roll. The name of some physicians practicing in Boston in 1760, 1775 are also informative. They include Abijah Shavir, probably Shaver, Cipher, John Homans, probably Homem, Naya Dowd David, Nahuya Fry, Ashkenazic, Sylvester Gardens, Joseph Gardner, Thomas Matthews, Joshua Levite, John Sprague, Dutch speaker of a foreign tongue, Samuel Adams, just like the bear, Charles Jarvis, John Jeffries, Arabic Jafar, Jean Ferron Iron, Thomas Cast, Arabic, Isaac Rant, Joseph Khalif, John Kronoschild, Ashkenazic, Edmund Dana, Spanish, George Emery, Amir, William Gagger, German Jagger, Hunter, Jaggermeister, Joshua Gee, Hebrew letter, Giles Heel, discussed in chapter 1, James Gerald, Ebenezer Robbie, diminutive for Reuben, tribe of Reuben, and Levi, Shepherd, that is Sephard. All right, get the bigger picture. Who's really colonizing the Americas? You guys starting to understand who's really was coming to colonize? Who were the colonists? Who were really the first colonists coming over here? Now remember, we just read the book Virginia's Colonial Soldiers by Lloyd DeWitt Buckstruck. A lot of those people from European countries were what? Swarthy, black, dark skin, brown. You know, you get it, right? So a lot of those people could have been Sephardic Moorish people that were just coming in through, or coming in as Protestants, as Irish, as English, as German. All right. In 1496, 4 years after the Inquisition began and Jews were banned from Spain, a man named Menno Simon was born in Holland. All right, Holland, the Dutch, right? As both his given and surnames indicate Hebrew affiliations. Simon, right? Simon. We believe it is very likely that Menno Simon was a Sephardic descent. By 1525, he had founded the Mennonites. All right, so this Sephardic person of Moorish person of Iberia, Portugal, and Spain, he was the one that founded the Mennonites, a sect that plays a prominent role in German Dutch, and Hungarian Protestantism. Protestantism. A 1901 book by Kunz, the German and Swiss settlement of colonial Pennsylvania, estimates that over 100,000 immigrants from these two countries arrived in colonial Pennsylvania. 100,000 immigrants from these two countries. All right, several Protestant sects were represented among them: Swiss Mennonites, the Walloons, and the Huguenots. Who are all these people? These are just tags. Dodge the hijack. Dodge the hijack big time. Dodge your own hijacks. I'm dodging my hijacks. Gotta go into this with an open mind. We're uncovering something here. Hello, Hawa. Warshif Red Lion, much love and respect, brother. Adasuni L, J9, Nehemiah Williams, Kiowa, Miss Parker, Council of Nice Earth, Dafe Boca, Cimarron, Fury Taino, what's up, brother? Amaruka, Dordit, thanks for being here. Patricia Copeland, thanks for all. Ugly Green, much love and respect, brother. Thanks for being here. Flystar TV London, hey, thanks for being here. Great interview. Make sure to support that channel. She's got a great interview there. All right. With me, it was awesome. All right, let me continue. Hey, I can't name everybody. So many people. We got 490 people. I just realized that. Wow. Love it. Welcome all those silent warriors out there who not in the chat. I know you guys are out there. I know you guys have been following for a while and listening. All right. So 100,000 immigrants from these two countries. Several of them were what? All these tags. Swiss Mennonites, Walloons, and Huguenots. Quakerism. Cognotes had been introduced to Germany by William Ames. What? Quakerism was what? Introduced by who? William Ames. He was what? Sephardic. He was a brother. Sephardic. He was of color. Remember the Sephardic Jews. Remember who these people are. Let's not forget. Keep that in your mind. We always thought all these people were white people. Why do you think they did all these different Christian sets and religion? You know, who were these people really? Cryptos, new Christians, so-called new Christians. William Ames was a Sephardic Jew. And that another Quaker, William Caton, Hebrew or Arabic word meaning small or little. So another one had visited the German Palatinate at a later date. Remember these German Palatines? Benjamin Franklin was saying that all these German Palatines were swarty. Let's not Germanize America with these swarty Germans. Let's not Germanize, he was saying. He was being very prejudiced towards these Germans, these so-called black Germans, swarty Germans. Benjamin Franklin in the 1750s wrote that. We went over the source. If you haven't seen it, make sure to catch my previous videos. Let's not skip courses or classes here if you really want to learn, because we all learning. I'm learning. We all still learning. It's been a long journey. It's been a great journey. Much love and respect to everybody tuned in. Smash that like button. Open Mijas in the house. Open Mijas in the house. Rassel Dazzle. Hello. Thanks for joining us today. Hey, what's up, brother Anu? Much love and respect. Pura vida, mi hermano. Terrence Howard. Thanks for coming in. P Legal Intel. Much love and respect. Everybody tuned into the chat. This is a live. We got a community chat right now. If you're tuning in later on, this was aired on March 22nd, 2021. We had with a live community chat, and we vibing. We vibing right now in the present time. Wow. And still another early minister, Johann Kelpius, believed he was to be taken up into heaven alive like Elijah. So all these Quakers, founders, were really Sephardic Jews, Moriscos, Muslim Moors. We have already made mention of South Carolina's very early Sephardic and Moorish history. All right. So we went over this in a lot of good videos. I hope you guys, this part is really good. There's a deep history with the expedition that we're about to read from Lucas Vasquez de Leon. I've gone over it before. We're going to go over it again, but it's a deep history. And a lot of this explains a lot of people's genealogy when talking about when they're trying to figure out who are these people that they don't know. They know they're not African people that were left behind in shipwrecks or whatever, or settled here and left behind. But they have a real genealogy, these people. It says here in 1526, Lucas Vasquez de Leon, a prominent settler and sugar grower on Hispaniola. All right. Who was growing sugar? Remember who these people are. Who was these prominent sugar plantation owners? Who had the monopoly? We already read it earlier. Ain't no going back from that. You can't try to cancel this out. This ain't a white man. We can't label this guy a so-called white man. We can't do that anymore. We know he was a prominent settler and sugar grower in Hispaniola. Sent an expedition to North Atlantic coast. This is in 1526. The colony of 500 settlers, including Leon, landed somewhere in the South Carolina coast, but met with several disasters. Now, I just want you to know, because it's not saying it here, we've gone over the info. He brought up Sephardic Ladinos, Spanish soldiers and prisoners of convicts that he had to work for him. And also he brought up Taino Carib people. He brought up enslaved. He brought them up. All right. And these were the so-called, and they were calling these people later on in history Negroes. They were saying these were the first so-called Negroes that were brought to America. It wasn't in 1619. So some people try to correct history and say it was in 1526 with the expedition of Lucas Valles de Leon. Well, what they're leaving out is that Lucas was a so-called Negro too. Yeah. You already know that so-called Negroes were here in America since creation. So both those dates, you can cancel them out. All right, this is them trying to explain why they're so-called black people. Because if you do the research of these two things, even the 1619 one, you'll see it's not African slaves. Can't prove it was African slaves, but we can prove other things. All right. So again, this colony of 500 settlers, who included Leon, they had a hard time. A year later, 150 of the colonists managed to straggle back to Hispaniola. The fate of the remaining ones is unknown. All right. Do the math. Who can help me with the math? How many stayed behind? How many didn't make it to Hispaniola? So 150 out of 500 made it back. Hey, what's up, Just Me? So, how many were left behind? Around 350, right? They don't know. So they say the remaining ones is unknown. We don't know what happened to them. Can I tell you guys what I'm kind of learning? This is a future videos. I'm giving you guys a spoiler. A lot of those left behind so-called Latinos and black Caribs and black Hispanic, black Irish, they were enslaved. A lot of those people eventually stayed behind. And what did they do? Who did you think they went to survive? Who do you think they went to survive? These so-called black Europeans. 350, about 350. We don't know if they all survived, but that's a large amount. That's a large amount of people being left behind in South Carolina and all these areas. I'm talking about so-called black Europeans and Carib Indians. So out of the 150 that made it back, we don't know how many of those were Indians. What if that was all the Indians that went back? We're like, hey, we're going back home. We're not too far. But they had a bad time. Hey, much love and respect. Thanks for the donation. I really appreciate that, Eric. All right. So again, I'm trying to explain to you here that, a lot of these ended up mixing in with the local Indians, the indigenous people. All right. Remember, this is 1520s. This is before the 1600s. So remember, 100 years before 1619, almost 100 years. So by the time 1619 came, these people already absorbed into what? into nations and tribes, and they had their own identities. You think the word Cherokee and Choctaw and all this existed? That ch sound came with Europeans, and you guys even know that the Cherokee had a different name, right? So who did they mix with? Who did they mix with? All right, there's a big story that is about to be unfolding. We got to embrace all the lines. Again, it's not just one grandma, it's many grandmas. We would argue that these settlers were very likely Sephardim and Moors. They were Sephardic and Moors, and there's little else to justify their being willing to leave the settled prosperity of Spanish Hispaniola to venture to the mosquito-ridden unknown coast of North America, unless the recently arrived Inquisition had caused them to recalculate their odds in a Catholic colony. So what do you think? Should I go work in the plantation, sugar plantation? Should I go back and be under this Catholic empire? Or should I just stay here with Abraham's children, with these wonderful people? They look like me, some of them. Oh, that one looks just like me. You know? In 1563, the Frenchmen were aided by Sir John Hawkins, an English privateer, pirate. John Hawkins, all right, he's a suspect Swarty too. We dig into all these people, the so-called privateer. Alion is a Sephardic surname. Alion was a Sephardic. Again, he was a brother too. The settlers named the place where they first made landfall the River Jordan. The River Jordan, did you guys know that? Present-day Cape Fear River, this is in South Carolina. This is in the 1520s. They never told you about this, huh? We would advance the same reasoning for Hernando de Soto's Sephardic surname. De Soto, Sephardic, De Soto. I got a picture of De Soto I got from the library. He looked just like Kaepernick. Yeah, the football player. 600-person expedition, right? So De Soto brought who? 600-person expedition. And we already know, if you haven't seen my videos, I believe which one it was. Let me see. I think it was the part 14 of From Indigenous American to African American, where we're talking about the Portuguese and the Spanish enslavement of the American Indians. It lets us know who these 600 people he brought with him were. 600 people, Sephardic Moorish people, Hernando de Soto's army. A lot of these were convicts and prisoners of war, Sephardic people that they were being forced to come over here. Expedition, all right, in the 1500s. So there was a lot of little Spanish settlements before the English in the southeast, and they don't really tell you about this history. They don't really want you digging into this history because you're going to start finding out something like this. A lot of these people are Sephardic Moorish people. 600-person expedition in 1540 through the southeastern region of North America. All right. But Warshi Red Line, he knows the history. He knows his genealogy. He can confirm all of this. But he goes way back. He don't just know colonial times. He knows how to link it back home. He knows how to link it back home. That's how deep it gets. And that's why I'm trying to tell you guys, you got to embrace this. Because eventually it links back home for a lot of you. All right, let's go to the next slide. Basil Breeze on the beat. Thanks, brother. I don't know if you guys are bored or not. We still got some time here. We're only 73 minutes in. You know we can go 5 hours. It don't matter to me. Concluding comments. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead once remarked that without purpose, human history was a barren exchange of names. In the case of Maryland, we have gone beneath the surface of the names to document marriage patterns, business partnerships, inheritance provisions, and other family matters. More than in any other colony, Greek, Ottoman, and Turkish roots are exposed once we rub off the English, Dutch, or Huguenot veneer. Let's go back. Repeat what you say, Kurimeo. More than in any other colony. We're talking about Maryland. All right. Once you take that tag off of English, Dutch, and Huguenot, you're gonna find Greek, Ottoman, and Turkish roots. And we're not talking about like modern day, what we think of these people. A lot of these people most of these people were very, very swarthy. back in 1600s. Talking about Greek, Ottomans, and Turkish, yes. At the base of it all, we encounter Spanish, Portuguese, and Hebrew, Arabic, and Berber. At the base of it all. So they go from English, Dutch, and Huguenot to Greek, Ottoman, and Turkish. But then if you go to the base of it all, they end up where? In Iberia, in North Africa, Portuguese, Hebrews, Spanish, Portuguese, Hebrew, Arabic, and Berbers. They're not English, Dutch, or Huguenots, you see? Just those elements that imbued the Sephardic world that came to an abrupt end in 1492, we have seen an ingrained pattern of cousin marriage, one that starts even before arrival in the New World, and one that is no respecter of nationalities. Business arrangements were often cemented by these intermarriages. These are business arrangements. A lot of these Sephardic families and Moorish families, that's what they did. And if you're from Louisiana, you already know what I'm talking about. Finally, we have drawn back the curtain of Quakerism. Finally, we can see who the Quakers really were to reveal the true motives that dictated where the family settled and where the family moved on to. None of these traits we suggest was random. This was not random. This was not accidental. Who were the Quakers? Who's William Penn? Who were the Quakers? Making treaties with the Lenape. Why you make treaties with the Quakers, Lenape? Well, maybe they kind of looked at you a little bit, huh? Maybe they came with peace. Maybe they came as Sephardic Jews and Moors. Like, hey, you speak Hebrew? Maybe you speak the old languages? Is there some commonality there? Can we communicate with each other? Why did Columbus bring a Hebrew and Arabic and Chaldean interpreter to speak to the Indians? What is the truth about the ancient languages? What does it mean to speak Hebrew? We're not talking about Bible stories here. Besides recruiting their fellow British Caribbeans, the Lord proprietors also sought out Huguenots as settlers, due one may surmise to their Sephardic Morisco affinity and enmity towards Spain, the colonial power to the south. Pamphlets were distributed in French to Huguenot refugee communities in Ireland. What? Huguenot refugees in Ireland. They were giving out what? Pamphlets, right? They were giving out pamphlets. They wanted to colonize what? The British Caribbean. With what? With French Huguenots. With French Huguenots. These are so-called Black French. French. So when they go to the Americas, they become just French. 200 years pass by. Some of these people are then become Haitian, Martinique people, Caribbean, so-called Negro slaves, Africans. You get what I'm trying to tell you? All right, let's get those likes up. Let's get these videos shared. Let's tell YouTube we like this kind of content. Let's not try to jam us up again like they did earlier. They didn't want me to start. They saw the picture. They saw the title. They were like, nah, let's mess this guy up. They made me restart my computer. They made me end my Zoom meeting and restart a new one and try out everything before I had to come on. They didn't want me to come on with you guys. They wanted me to be like, it's not working and give up. All right. So again, they were passing out these pamphlets in Ireland, right? When Louis the 14th repealed the Edict of Nantes in 1685, which had provided religious freedom to non-Catholics. Non-Catholics, they're talking about the Sephardic Jews and Moors, non-Catholics. Thousands of Huguenots fled France. 1,500 of them made their way to South Carolina. 1,500, all right. Now, you guys keeping track of the numbers? Edgar reports that prominent surnames among these colonists were Banu, the Davidic good name. See Appendix A. Cordes de Saussure, de Vaux, Dubois, Forest de Silva. All right, future video, we got Dubois. One of his ancestors is Huguenot. The Dubois are Huguenots. De Silva, Gaylord, Gendron, Gerard, Horry, Moroccan, Huger, Lawrence, Laguerre, Manigault, Marion, Pierre, Porcher. All these guys had all these surnames that somehow today, a lot of them resemble car names, car brands. All right, so who started that? Ravenel, Simons, and Timothy. Again, several are identifiable as Sephardic Morisco. In 1764, an additional 300 Huguenot settlers arrived in hopes of developing the silk and wine industry. Who was running the silk industry? The same two Sephardic Moorish dominated industries attempted in the Virginia colony. Most of the incoming settlers were drawn from La Rochelle and Bordeaux, two French cities with large Sephardic Morisco populations. Remember that. All right. So if you got ancestors coming from these places, remember these are large Sephardic Morisco Moorish populations. Earlier in the 1720s, Purisburg on the left bank of the Savannah River had been settled by around 800 French Swiss settlers, which we have argued elsewhere were primarily of Jewish and crypto-Jewish ancestry. These so-called Swiss people, French Swiss people, they were crypto-Jewish. Crypto-Jewish. Much love and respect to everybody out there tuning in. Much love, Sanaya, for the love. Even Blake, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate it. Anybody else has donated? If I missed you, I'll catch the chat and the replay, and I'll make sure to acknowledge who was doing that, who's showing the love. Thank you very much. All right. Much love and respect. Listen to Kiowa. He got the drop. Kiowa will be in the background with me researching a lot of this stuff, especially this Huguenot video. He was actually live with me that day. So Kiowa got the whole drop on this. And trust, when he's saying, he knows what he's saying. Huguenots set the tone of the Carolina colony. With their wealth, professional backgrounds, and gentility, it is sometimes hard to distinguish them from Sephardic Jews. Charleston became the fourth oldest Jewish community in the American colonies, after New York, Philadelphia, and Savannah, and with the establishment of Beth Elohim in 1749. Charleston, remember that Charleston was a free people of color town in colonial times. They weren't the minority, they were the majority, very wealthy. A lot of them were slave owners. They came out in that book we showed you, 1830s and the 1850s, that book. All right. This is real history. That the old DaCosta family, remember that the Costas were slave owners. They were being labeled as Negro and colored folks, colored and mulatto. They were Irish though. They were Huguenot Irish. They were Sephardic, Iberian, Irish Huguenots. The DaCosta family plot served as the location of the Cummins Street Cemetery, founded in 1764. Charleston's overly Jewish population of 500 constituted the largest, wealthiest, and most cultured Jewish community in the colonies. Again, Charleston, where coincidentally, it was the biggest export of American Indians done, right there in South Carolina, where all these Sephardic and Moorish people were, coincidentally. More and more war. It's about business and family ties. That's all it is. To them, at least, at that time. Until about 1830, it had the largest Jewish population. Until when? 1830. That's that barrier, right? When you get stuck on your genealogy, that's the barrier. That's when they start doing their little reconstruction, right? After the 1830s, there's a lot of revolutions going on in Europe. All of a sudden, 1890s, you got a whole bunch of people coming in New York. Whole bunch of Europeans. But who was there before the 1830s? Unlike New York, Philadelphia, or most other American Jewish communities, with the notable exception of Savannah, it never experienced the slightest repugnance from its host city. Part of that goodwill undoubtedly came from the Jews' fellow travelers. Who? The Jews' fellow travelers, their buddies, the Huguenots, of course. Was it surprising then that Charleston became the birthplace of the Reformed Judaism movement in the 1840s? Or that South Carolina voted the first Jew to public office, Francis Salvador, a newly arrived immigrant, in 1774 elected to the first provincial Congress? As we have seen, South Carolina's Jewish roots are very deep indeed. Its Muslim element in the colonial period, moreover, are not insignificant. It's also significant, their Muslim element. Yet despite their crypto status, Jews, Moors, and their descendants made important contributions to South Carolina's culture and economy throughout the colonial period. One of South Carolina's major agricultural crops during this time was indigo. The dye plant was introduced by Elizabeth Lucas and its processing was developed by Andrew DeVos, both of whom have likely Sephardic ancestry. Moses Lindo, an openly Jewish settler, was the colony's indigo export inspector in 1762, and key producers included John B., James Stovall, Robert Sams, George Mitchell, Isaac Hayne, Charles Pinckney, and John Hudson, most of whom bear Sephardic Morisco surnames. Again, Morisco are Muslims who converted to Christianity. Morisco, Muslims, so-called black people. Remember, we always thought these were all white people. I know it's a lot to take in. I know it's like, nah, what are you saying, Kurimi? Like, nah, I can't just, nah, not like, nah, it's not. No, yes, it is. Many French Huguenots and newly minted English, right? So open quotes, close quotes, English quotes. These are not English. They're not even French. They're not even Huguenots. You get what you see all the tags, right? They entered what? South Carolina and North Carolina via Ireland. So these English, oh my gosh. So okay, let's get the whole. So we got a Portuguese or Spaniard, Muslim, or Sephardic Moorish Jew, who eventually went to France, became known as Huguenots, and then French, who eventually moved to Ireland, right? And in Ireland, they became minted as English. And so when they came into the Americas, they were English, Irish, but they were really Sephardic crypto, secret Muslims, secret Jews. Black is a crayon color. We ain't talking about crayon colors. Crayon colors. Huguenots, because we know who the Huguenots are. We ain't talking about crayon colors here. Ain't no getting out of this one. It's just going to keep coming more and more. And it's not going to be me who's about to confirm all this stuff. This is all going to be mainstream. And when it becomes mainstream, you already know. You heard it first. You already knew. Thus, they swelled the ranks of the so-called Scots and Irish. They swelled the ranks of the Scots and Irish. Again, we just read the book Virginia's Colonial Soldiers. There were many Scottish and Irish people there being called or labeled black, swarty, black, brown complexion, black, not black original. So let's be politically correct for Chief Jonesy. He wants us to say melanated autochthons. All right, let's call them melanated autochthons, Scot-Irish settlers. Melanated autochthons, Huguenots. Melanated autochthons, Europeans. I can give you 25 different definitions for more. It's not just about complexion. And it's not just about complexion, Mr. Jonesy. You guys want to keep going? The largest migration of Irish and Scottish. Okay, hold on, skip something. It says they swelled the ranks of the so-called Scot-Irish settlers who are estimated to account for about 1/3 to half of the whole population of the South. Again, who lives in the South today? So you're saying you only got one grandma and everybody's an Indian. Everybody's an Indian on your family, right? 99%. That's what Sister Betty told me. She said 99% she Indian. And she got upset when I started teaching about the black Europeans. She said I'm making it all up. And she did a video to slander me. But we got mad love for the haters. What would we do without the haters? Even the elder ones. I guess old dogs can't learn new tricks. The largest migration of Irish and Scottish people occurred after the Battle of Culloden in 1745 when Prince Charles Edward Stuart was defeated and the Jacobite rebellion against England was lost for good. But the roots of Irish immigration, all right, it keeps going. So again, now who's the so-called Scots and Irish? But apart from these Sephardic, Huguenot, Scot and Irish, we know that the indigenous people, we read the anthropological books, a lot of the indigenous people, the Highland of the Scots and the Irish people were of dark complexion. All right. So there's no coming out of that one. We're not talking about tans here. We're not talking about a suntan. that many of these Irishmen were of recent French Huguenot provenance, and before that of Spanish Jewish origin, can be seen in a compilation of genealogies covering some of the South Carolina's famous colonial surnames. In fact, as historian Lyburn repeatedly points out, the Scotsmen changed their way of identifying themselves as it suited them, alternating between Irish, Ulster, Scottish, English, British, and other designations such as Presbyterian or Quaker. All right, so we're about to get that this basically is what happened a lot of the time with this term, the Black Dutch, or the black, it depended on the necessity sometimes when you wanted to be labeled that, and not, call yourself what you really are, whether it was a Sephardic Jew, Moor, or an Indian. It says Bailey, this Huguenot name is derived from Philippe de Belux, a French refugee. So we go over a lot of the last names here. It says Indian traders active in Georgia also include John and Daniel Ross, Christian Russell, Cilician or Silesian, Ashkenazi, Nicholas White, a native of Marseilles, but resident in this nation, Creek Confederacy, 30 years. All right, he was a resident in the Creek Confederacy. Mr. Nolan's White, but he's from Marseilles, that's France, right? But he was there for 30 years, so he became a Creek. Abraham and Mordecai, a Jew of bad character, according to an Indian agent, Benjamin Hawkins, but an intelligent Jew, according to Albert James Pickett, author of the History of Alabama. Mrs. Duran, a female trader, Obadiah Law, Cornelius Daughtery, a Jacobite, said to be the first trader, a Jacobite. Remember the complexion of the Jacobites. We got the shit manifest. And we also got that book from the 1700s calling them, labeling them, describing them as so-called very black or very dark skin. So a Jacobite said to be the first trader or one of the first among the Cherokee. The first trader was a Jacobite with among the Cherokee. John Van Later, an important Cherokee mixed blood family. James Leslie, James Lewis, Aaron Harrod, Zachariah Cox, a land developer. Richard Sparks, a captain of Tellico Blockhouse in Cherokee upcountry. Cox is considered a Melungeon name. Davis, a blacksmith. John Marino, a Spaniard, with quotes, right? Was the Spaniard Marine, who's the Marines? Somebody just said it earlier, Jonesy, Moors, right? So he's a so-called black man, a Spaniard, but he's a so-called black man, right? A Moor, Marino. John B. Moore, a Huguenot whose original Sephardic name was probably Benamor, and whose Cherokee son was known as Musty or mixed breed, all right? So what did he do most likely? He came and mixed with an American Indian, all right? So we got grandma's genealogy, the Indian part, right? His mom, but we leave out his dad's part, right? We don't want to remember because we always thought it was what, a white European or somebody not importing, or they just made that up. That was just somebody who owned him. That wasn't his real dad. Let's not count that side of the family. But he was known as a Musty. That makes sure they called him a Musty. A Sephardic or Huguenot and an Indian. A Huguenot and an Indian is a Musty. Now you guys know. A Huguenot and an Indian is a Musty. There you go. Or mixed breed. Is that what they call him, mulatto too? Thomas Nair, Arabic. James McQueen, corruption of Maquan, son of Cohen. John McKee. McQueen, son of Cohen. So McKee is corruption of Maquan, a son of Cohen. John McKee. Who's John McKee? Do you guys know who John McKee is? Got a video. I know Top Cats did a great video on the McKees. I want to also, I was studying the McKees as well. I learned a lot from him. I had some other info. We're trying to figure out. I'm trying to prove who his dads are. He was John McKee was a wealthy landlord. He was labeled if you go Google him right now, he's called an African American, but he looks very light skinned to me. John McKee, right? Alexander Long, Robert Bunning, Bonaduran, Greenwood LeFleur, Benjamin Perryman, mixed blood, mixed blood. Hardy Perry introduced cattle among the Choctaw. Hardy Perry, right? He brought cattle to the Choctaw. So he's moving in with the Choctaw, right? William Dixon Monrad, originally Jacob Monarchy from Munich, Germany. And John Shepherd, considered a Melungeon name. All right, so how did these 5 civilized tribes become? Now remember, a lot of these people were here from since 1520s. A Leon's expedition, remember 350 got left behind. De Soto brought some that got stayed behind too. You know, a lot of these people were already here. They were doing what they thought was normal. Survive. They saw a beautiful woman. They loved the people. They got to know it wasn't always about conquest and war. You know, it wasn't always about that. And we're not here to just talk bad about Europeans or that. Oh, you're half European. No, it's not even about that. Right now, I'm just going at the people who like to point fingers. If you're not one of those people, you're good. You already know the history, and you come here with love, and you come here with logic, thinking, and with some wisdom and knowledge, and with some respect. Because we all learning. We all learning. It's okay. It's okay. So how do you become civilized? And whose eyes do you become civilized to be called a five civilized tribe? That means you're adapting to European ways. That's why they're calling you civilized. And the other people they're calling wild Indians. They ain't civilized. They're not recognized. They're getting enslaved by these same tribes. This is real history. A lot of the Virginia Saponi tribe, the Catawba, they got enslaved by the Cherokee. They got enslaved by the Chickasaw and Choctaw. Yeah. So who's really, or the Creek? So when they say Chickasaw freedmen or Cherokee freedmen, that's the Cherokee freeing somebody. Who were they freeing? So were they really Cherokee? So these are all future videos. We're going to explain all this really good. All right. I know it might sound confusing when I'm trying to say it right now. But a lot of those people were actually from other tribes. They were from other indigenous tribes you don't know the name of. You just know them as Cherokee freedmen. All right. So this is deep history we just read right here. All right. I remember we're just trying to embrace every line here. Every line here. Not just one grammar. When Chickasaw lands were returned to Spain in 1781, the Coopers, Americanized, but still able to speak Spanish. These Coopers were black Latinos, black Sephardic, black Spaniards. Received grants. They got grants and operated profitable tobacco plantations in what is now the tri-state area of Mississippi, Alabama, and Tennessee. Both the Coopers and LeBons provide good examples of crypto Jews' chameleon-like ability to adopt different personae to suit their occasion. What? They got skills. They got what? The chameleon-like ability. Chameleon-like ability to adopt into whatever suited their occasion. These crypto Sephardic Jews to adapt. It's not me saying all this. Don't kill the messenger. The Coopers alternated between claiming to be British, Portuguese, French, Spanish, and American, meaning Indian. They claimed to be Indian too, and gave their origin variously as Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Kentucky. They explained the Indian admixture in the family as Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, Black Dutch, and Black Irish. Coopers considered a Melungeon surname as is white. All right? All right, Vaso Briefs. Much love, respect. We ain't done. This is just intermediate. We got to the Black Dutch, right? This term Black Dutch. So this guy was being labeled, this family alone labeled themselves all this stuff. And they're saying that the Indian in them, just like most of you always tell me, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, right? Just missing the Blackfoot here. The general ones that everybody says they are, right? But these aren't the only tribes that existed here. And where did this ch sound come from? And where did these names weren't here before Europeans came, guys? These names were not here before Europeans came. They had different names. All right, so we got to this part. A lot of this that we're reading is from the Genealogical History, Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America. This is a great book. These people did their homework. They got all the sources in this book. If you want to verify any of this genealogy, all right, this is real history. And it's not about white people, not just about white Europeans. And it's not about the white man coming and invading. the white man. It's easy to blame one people. It's easy. So we're here in search of the Black Dutch, right? Search of the Black Dutch. How you guys enjoying the presentation? Again, I know that was 99 minutes, but that was just a recap. How can we talk about the Black Dutch if we don't have a full understanding of the whole background? Because you got to understand this whole, because the Black Dutch is not just one thing. Again, you can't just say, oh, he's a Dutch. What kind of Dutch? Was he a French Huguenot? Was he a Sephardic Jew? Was he one of the original Holland, Saxon, the Saxons, the original Swarthy Saxons that were there, Frisians? Are we talking about Germanic tribes that were there? Who are we really talking about? We got to start getting specific. We got to start getting specific in search of the Black Dutch. All right, let's see what we got next. Bear with me. I had a whole presentation here. I think it closed on me. Just bear with me. I'm gonna let Basil breathe. All right. All right. Thanks for the patience right there. My window's all closed. I had to find all the tabs and stuff, but I got them right here. So I just want to play this video right here real quick. This is from ancestralfindings.com. This is fair use. Again, we're just doing this for education, commentary, and so we can learn and correct our history. All the lies you guys told us. Yeah, that's what we're doing. All right, so I'm gonna play this real quick.
Welcome to the ancestralfindings.com podcast, episode number 8. Were you told you have Black Dutch ancestry, but don't know what it means? It means a lot of different things. Here is what you need to know about these people.
Oh, we can't get that music in there. Come on, don't jam us up.
In your genealogy the term Black Dutch is something you may encounter in your genealogy research, or maybe you've heard it mentioned in your family as being part of your ancestry. But what does it mean exactly? Who were the Black Dutch? If you're just getting started on your genealogy adventure, you may not know. This is the explanation you need. I found it very interesting to learn that the Black Dutch were not one particular race. That is the most important thing to remember. It is a term that is used in historical documents to refer to several different groups. Knowing your ancestral origin,
Several different groups, all right? It's not just one thing. So knowing your genealogy is what the guy's trying to emphasize here.
and some of your family history will help you put the term Black Dutch in context with your own family. The most common designation of Black Dutch refers to Dutch immigrants to New York who had swarthier complexions than most other Dutch. The darker
Swarthier complexions.
complexions were usually due to intermarriage or out-of-wedlock births with Spanish soldiers during the Spanish occupation of the Netherlands. Many of these
So this guy's admitting that these people are so-called Black Dutch because they mix with Spaniards. So what does that make the Spaniards if that's why they're so-called black?
called Black Dutch are still in New York today, while other families migrated south and west to other states. DNA studies have shown that these people are of mainly European descent, with little, if any, African or Native American DNA in them.
Okay, so that was a big one. Now he's saying from research or from them doing their, DNA supposedly, they're only seeing European. They're like, but they're definitely not African or Indian. These are straight up Europeans. These so-called Black Dutch are Europeans. All right, you heard what he said. They're straight up Europeans. They have no African in them.
Sephardic Jewish merchants came to the Netherlands from Spain and Portugal in the 15th century after being expelled from those nations. Some of them were admitted to England during Oliver Cromwell's occupation of it in the 17th century during the English Civil War. Many of these eventually came to the American colonies and settled in New England and in the South. The Sephardic Jewish immigrants often mixed with free or enslaved Africans and bore children with them. Sometimes the men stayed with their mixed.
All right, so let's dodge the hijack big time, but he just said something right what we were just reading. These so-called Black Dutch, right, intermarried with who? Free people of color. He's calling them Africans, right? He's adding that hijack in there. We know they're not African. A lot of these people were American Indians. A lot of these people were other Europeans that were freed already. All right, definitely not African. So let's dodge the hijack, but he just told you, right? They mixed in, all right? With who? Free people of color, these so-called Black Dutch.
Race families, especially if the woman was free, while other times they abandoned them for Jewish wives. The descendants of these Sephardic Jewish immigrants and the Africans in America with whom they bore children were also historically referred to as Black Dutch.
All right, we know they're not African, so who are they talking about? Dodge the hijack. Big time. Again, every time they keep throwing that word in there, I'm going to help you break the spell. I'm not talking about Africans here. What Africans were over here in America? So these Black Dutch, Sephardic people, Moorish, black, so-called swarthier Dutch were marrying, and their descendants are being called what? Black Dutch? So who's these free people of color? Okay, so then you just got here, bro.
Some Native Americans, particularly the Cherokees of the Carolinas, identified themselves as Black Dutch in order to avoid being sent west to reservations.
So the Cherokee were identifying themselves as Black Dutch, right? Conveniently, right? So they wouldn't be relocated and things like that. They can get land, they get grants. It was a benefit to being labeled Dutch and not claiming Cherokee, right? But was it always just because they didn't want to relocate, or was one of their parents actually a Sephardic Jew, Black Dutch? That's individual case by case genealogy you have to do.
Themselves, this designation also allowed them to buy and own land in the East, something that was only permitted to those of European descent at the time. These natives denied their ancestry, sometimes for generations, because they were concerned their land would be taken from them and they would be sent west. Today, though, most natives who identified as Black Dutch have become open about their ancestry. If you have a native in your family who identified as Black Dutch in order to stay in the East and buy land, you will probably know it through family records and strong oral tradition. The term Dutch has long been used for German immigrants, as Germans called themselves the Deutsche people.
Deutsch, yep.
This easily anglicized into Dutch, and both German and Dutch immigrants became known by the same designation. The Pennsylvania Dutch are the descendants of German immigrants, and many groups of them, particularly the Amish, still speak various versions of German today, like the dark-skinned immigrants from the Netherlands, who settled in New York, German immigrants to Pennsylvania, and other
Dark-skinned immigrants from the Netherlands, right, who settled in New York. He just told you, we're not talking about Africans.
areas were also referred to as Black Dutch, if they had darker than usual complexions. The surnames of these Black Dutch have remained decidedly German, even to the present day, making it easier to identify a Black Dutch ancestor who was really a German immigrant than possibly for any other group of people referred to as Black Dutch. As many northern families who were referred to as Black Dutch immigrated south, the original meaning of the term became lost through the generations. Many southern people today claim to have Black Dutch ancestry, usually believing they have an ancestor who bore children with a Native American. In most cases, this is incorrect.
Ooh.
However, it was not uncommon for people in the South to have children with Africans during the 18th and 19th centuries.
All right, dodge the hijack with the African again. And you heard what he said. A lot of times this is not correct. You know, just because you heard that you were Black Dutch doesn't mean, they didn't always mean 100% that it was Indian, even though Indians use that term too. So it's very complicated. And again, it's not an easy one thing like, oh yeah, Black Dutch means this. All right, so we're trying to break this down, right?
And these mixed-race families gradually integrated into their communities. Most of the southern Black Dutch do not have German or Dutch ancestry at all, but are of English or Irish descent, with maybe some African mixed in.
Oh, so they're actually Black Irish or Black English. Again, remember, who's these Black Irish, who's these Black English. So they might end up being Sephardic Moorish people as well, you know, or, you know, not Dutch. And, you know, they said they, you know, they had descendants, they integrated in their communities, okay?
Since Black Dutch is an American term, you will be doing all of your research in American records. It was a common term in legal and personal documents from the 1600s through the early 1900s in this country.
Legal term.
If you come across it in your research, or if you've been told you have Black Dutch ancestry, the easiest thing to do is to get a DNA test from one of the inexpensive companies that now does this for
Oh, no DNA test. Come on, buddy. We already broke that down. We know that's fake. We know that's just entertainment. You're going to try to link us back to Yoruba, to the Yoruba tribe in Africa. All right. You're telling us, you're dropping some jewels on us, but then you're trying to make us do DNA tests. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Stop that. We're going to do our genealogy. We ain't doing DNA tests anymore.
Genealogists. It will tell you where your ancestors came from in the past several hundred years, and this will allow you to narrow down the ethnicity of your own particular brand of Black Dutch. Knowing this will make following the paper trail to your original Black Dutch ancestor easier. You can follow the line of ethnicity back through census records, court records, wills, church records, and even old newspaper records. Eventually, you will find someone in...
Oh, whoa. They're trying to add the hijack music. All right. We got to stop that. All right, so you got homeboy right here. He gave a little lesson of what he thought of Black Dutch was, but a lot of it is really verifiable what he said. I want you to think about what he really said right there. All right, this is not me trying to say all this stuff. I found this other website. Well, first of all, I just wanted to show these pictures. It says here, the so-called Black Africans who ruled Europe. So dodge the hijack, because again, if anybody back in the day would see a Black man dressed like a European, he would call him a Black African European, right? But we know now that that's just hijack. All right. It says here, members of the Theban Legion, Germany. All right. We know there was Black Europeans, right? We're not just talking about a tan. We're not talking about tans here. This is a Moorish general from Scotland. A Moorish general from Scotland. A Moorish general from Scotland. Forever and ever. Yo, Basil Breeze with the beats. Break my heart. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Here we go. Let's put on a little bit of music while we see the images. Let's go back. Let's go back. All right. All right, Breeze 3000. Yeah, so we got, what do we got here? Anonymous Venetian artist bust of a black in livery, Italy. A black in Italy. A so-called black in Italy. A crayon color in Italy. And then we got, who we got here? St. Gregory of Germany. This is about 1520. St. Gregory. St. Gregory, huh? Yeah. Much love and respect to everybody tuned in. I'm glad you guys are enjoying this. Thank you for being respectful. Thank you for dealing with any trolls. We're just here to build and learn. We ain't here to like be biased about history and choose our doctrine and push our doctrine on people. All right, we're just trying to look at the facts. What do, J9? Moors in Rome, Black Emperor. A Moor in Rome, right? A Black Emperor, they said. In this website. Look at this statue right here. Forever. You can break my heart. Forever. Forever. Let them know, Bezo. Forever and ever. You can break my heart. Don't break my heart. Saint Benedict of Palermo, 1520s, 1589. Saint Benedict. Breeze 3000, Moorish nobleman, 15th century. So when we're talking about Moors and Sephardic Jews, what are you picturing? I know you were already here. You were over there too in Europe though. And you came with intentions to colonize, you know, can't take that away. More and more war, right? That's what they say. Noblemen from Spain. A nobleman from Spain, a Spanish Sephardic Morisco, could possibly become a Huguenot, who could have possibly become a Black Dutch, right? Who could have possibly become known as a Protestant, an Irish. Who's this? He's pimped out. Look at that. Portrait of unknown meaning or context, said to be in the National Gallery, Stubborn Palace in Prague, Czech Republic. Said to be by Jos Van Cleef. Okay, so they say they don't know, right? Look at this guy. He's so noble. He's so rich. And look at that. They don't know, though. They don't want to tell us who this really is, right? They don't know who this guy is. So wealthy. That's probably his servant right there. His Ashkenazic priest right there. Servant. And who's this guy right here? Believed to be James Francis Edward Stuart, Prince James III of England, because of similarities in armor, hairstyle, and leopard skin cloak found in a fake whitenized portrait of Prince James III of England. Is that a leopard or a jaguar? Says who was son of deposed King James II of England, James VII of Scotland. As such, James III claimed the English, Scottish, and Irish thrones as James III of England and Ireland and James VIII of Scotland. Upon the death of his father in 1701, he was recognized as King of England, Scotland, and Ireland by his cousin Louis XIV of France. His cousin, Louis XIV, his cousin. Right? So if that's his cousin, what does Louis XIV look like? Got a future video about the Louises of France. What does they have to do with the Moors of the Wachita? All right, we're going to break all this down. Following his death in 1766, he was succeeded by his son, Charles Edward Stuart, in the Jacobite succession. 2 wars to restore the Stuarts to the kingship of Britain failed the Jacobite wars. And who's this guy? Look at this. Look at the armor. Look at the clothes. Why would this African dress like a European? Why this African don't dress like his African heritage if he's African? Huh? Wake up, Sion. Wake up, Sion. Amadou Khan's rise. All right, look at this. You see this? Look what he's holding. Saint Maurice with shield bearing a Moor's head. Saint Maurice with a Moor's head. And who's this guy? Who's this very swarthy guy? Also pimped out with his chalice and his gloves. He's pimped out. Why is this African dressed like a European? Oh, maybe because he's not an African. They don't even give us the name here. We don't know. Now we don't know who this could have been. This could be somebody famous in history that we think was white. And what is this? We've shown this guy before. Bust of Antonio Manuel de Vunda, called Il Negrita, Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore in Rome. All right, this is an Italian. The nickname Il Negrita suggests that he is of Greek origin from the region of Negrita. Oh, so Negrita, what do you think Negrita, that region of Negrita, why do you think it's called Negrita in Greece? Huh? So this is an ancient Greek. This is a Greek. This is an original Greek is what I was trying to tell you earlier. We can't picture Greeks like how we picture them today. This is what we got right here. And this is on a wall. Where? In the Basilica of Santa Maria de Magnon in Rome. That's on the wall right there. Why would they put that there? Huh? He looked like Dr. Sebi, huh? Damn, he reincarnated as Dr. Sebi. Interesting, huh? And so, you know, these people are here blogging and saying, oh, these are Africans and all that other stuff. And what is this right here? So we think these are maybe North African people, but this is in Spain. Moors in Spain. All right, so when we talk about Morisco becoming a Huguenot, or Moor becoming known as a Sephardic Jew, going to South Carolina, establishing a plantation in the West Indies, sugar plantations, you know, what are you picturing? What are you picturing? When you hear about crypto Muslims, what are you picturing? Crypto Muslims from the 1400s. What are you picturing? Oh, it's a Congo ambassador. Really? Wow. I cannot believe you haven't been paying attention over the years, man. I know the hijack and I know what they tell us, man. Now you need to prove to me he came from Congo. Show me what town he's from, what tribe in the Congo he's from, when did he arrive in Spain and Europe. Show me the ship he took there. Show me all that stuff, right? Show me, man. Bust of Othello, the Moor of Venus. Othello, famous Othello, right? From Shakespeare's writings. The Moor, Othello the Moor. And we got some coins right here. Who's that on the coin? Look at that. All right, I don't think we got any more pictures. We don't got no pictures. So who are the Black Dutch, right? The elusive Black Dutch of the South. Now it says here, many people who now live and have roots in Northeast Mississippi, North Alabama, South Tennessee, and other parts of South are descendants of the Black Dutch. Really, who were and are the Black Dutch? The term in some areas has become so antiquated that only a few of the elderly even remember the use of the term. I first heard the term from my grandmother Crane, who had the surname Page. Her grandparents were butlers and mayhalls. She would often refer to their lineage as Black Dutch. One of my aunts on my maternal side described her grandmother as Black Dutch. She said Poppy said we were Black Dutch, an Indian. Sometimes my mother would say, I think we are king to the Indians. Grandma so and so looked like an Indian. As a whoops, sorry about that. As very as a very curious youngster, I was always asking myself, who are the Black Dutch? Now I just want to point this out. This is from nativespeople.com. This is from Natives People magazine, and this article is not longer in the internet. They took it out. This was a source I found on Wikipedia. This was an actual article written in that magazine, The Elusive Black Dutch, but you cannot find this. I had to go in the archives, time machine thing that they have stored up. So it says here, as a very curious youngster, I was always asking myself, who are the Black Dutch? Where did they come from? As time went by, the term lay dormant except when both sides of the family were together for a reunion or funeral, and conversation would arise as to who we were and where did we come from. Both sides of my family characteristics range from dark hair, dark eyes, and olive skin to red hair, blue eyes, and fair skin. This is somewhat typical in some families of the area. With such blending over the past 150 years, it was interesting to try to determine who was what and what was who, and what was who. All right, so it goes on. My cousin from Georgia came up to me one day in a low voice, seriously asked, "Who is the Black Dutch in our family?" Although I had corresponded in the early 1990s with relatives concerning genealogy and would sometimes mention the Black Dutch, it was not until June 1995 that at Iuka, Mississippi Heritage Day Festival that I recently went into high gear and got into a serious search for the Black Dutch. The term Black Irish is sometimes used, but not as much as Black Dutch. When the term Black Dutch was mentioned, many of the people held up their hand and looked at one another. I knew then I was not alone in wondering about the Black Dutch. Surnames with Black Dutch heritage, I'm sorry, that have been collected to date are all English names. How interesting. What was recognized was that true Dutch names would be similar to German spelling and pronunciations. Names like Brown, Butler, Mayhaw, Johnson, Tiffin, and Macy, for example, somehow did not sound like Dutch or German, but these were the names with Black Dutch lineage. All right, so you hear what she's saying? And we already heard earlier that a lot of these people were actually Irish or English who were actually Sephardic and Moorish people. Here's another note to handle. Almost every time the Black Dutch was found, Indian lineage was found. So you hear that? Almost every time, almost every time Black Dutch was found, Indian lineage was found. And to date, a high percentage of association in the Uuka, Tishomingo, Itawamba areas has been established with the Cherokee. A representative of the Eagle Bear clan of the Free Cherokee said that her grandmother told her that her family escaped the Trail of Tears. They were forced to hide in caves and become known as Black Dutch to hide their identity. So you got to understand, there had to have been a large amount of Black Dutch population in order for you to even claim to be Black Dutch, so you can blend in and hide as Black Dutch. And why? And how could a Cherokee, right? How can an Indian blend in as a Black Dutch if a Black Dutch is so-called black, right? So-called black. So that Indian is also what? Dark skin, right? So-called Cherokee. What was the original name? Who are they really talking about? The tribal name of these people, because Cherokee didn't exist before Europeans came here. The name, I mean, that name was not here before Europeans got here. Also used, so it says, I was also told that other tribes beside the Cherokee also use the Black Dutch term, including the Chickasaws and the Choctaw. I believe the Creek descendants could have also used the term. One of my own grandmothers, whom my great aunt told me about, was referred to as Black Dutch and was often ironically mistaken for an Indian when they migrated to Oklahoma in the late 1800s. All right, so was his grandma an Indian? Was she a Sephardic Jew, Moor? Was she an Irish, Black Irish? He would have to do his genealogy, right? But again, what I'm trying to say from the beginning is, we got to embrace all the grandmas, not just one. All right? Even the ones who were claiming other things. During the 1996 Burnsville, Mississippi intertribal gathering on the banks of the Tenn-Tom Waterway, I walked with members of the Four Fires dance group from the Florence, Alabama area. One member of the drums group said his people, the Cherokee, were also known as Black Dutch. that this was just another name used to cover up the Indian identity. Remember, from the 1830s on. Now remember also, as I'm reading, I know, oh yeah, they were Indian. Remember how good the Huguenots, the Sephardic Jews and crypto Jews were good at hiding under different labels, because not only because they were being, now remember, these people, it's not that they're just being relocated, right? The Sephardic Jewish people are still being persecuted by the Catholic Empire. They can't openly say they're this and that. So I remember earlier we read that a lot of these Huguenots, a lot of these Sephardic Jews were claiming to be Indian too. And a lot of them did mix in and had children with Indian women. All right, but it doesn't remove their European genealogy. It was perilous times for those who braved Andrew Jackson's greed and political reign of terror on the southeastern Indian people. Now, Andrew Jackson, future video. I know this is hard to accept, but Andrew Jackson, he was part Catawba. Andrew Jackson's brother, I believe, was killed by the Cherokee. The Cherokee enslaved the Catawba. There was a personal grudge for Andrew Jackson there with the Cherokee and a lot of the 5 civilized tribes who were related to so-called Sephardic Jews and Muslim Moors. So it wasn't just about that he hated Indians. He specifically had a thing against the Cherokee, specifically. And there's a deep story behind that. There's a very deep story behind that. And I'm going to show you the evidence. I'm going to show you the information. All right? There's a whole history they left out. They always wanted us to, they painted a picture for us to follow with specific people, specific stories. All right? And demonize and put people and make people evil for a specific reason when it fitted, So yes, he did what he did. Yes, I'm not saying he didn't do all that and he didn't make people go on, but he had a personal with these people. There's a whole background history to him and his people and who he was. Also, this gentleman mentioned that he had heard of 2 types of Dutch, the Highland Dutch and the Black Dutch. He said the Black Dutch were the Cherokee. 2 members of the Four Fires dance group, and who were notably Cherokee, said their people were Black Dutch. I was told that Black Dutch was simply another name for Cherokee. Census rolls in the Moulton, Alabama area in the late 1800s show a family name listed as white, then 10 years later as Black Dutch, and then 10 years later as Cherokee. All right? I find this a lot when I'm doing genealogy. All right? So I know you go back 10 years, all of a sudden they're white, but he's just telling you it's the same people. In one census, they're white. The next census, they're Black Dutch. And then the next census, they're Cherokee. All of a sudden. The elusive question. All right. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I know you guys are going in there. I know I do. Sounds like I'm giving a lot of opinions, and trust me, I'm trying not to, and I don't. I'm telling you because I'm gonna prove this. Things that I'm saying. So hope you guys are enjoying this presentation. All right. So it says the elusive question is, when did the term Black Dutch arise? A strong probability is after 1830, when the forced removal of the Cherokees from their homeland began. Were there, in fact, the Dutch people with similar physical characteristics, or was the term coined and manufactured to match the occasion? The fact has worked very well. It is understandable that the Cherokee Chickas and others who remained behind had to come up with cover-up in order to survive. Now, we already know there was Black Dutch. So is this ain't the only reason? I want you guys to read. I'm reading this to you now so you can understand the history behind it and why a lot of these people call themselves Black Dutch, but it's not just that, because we already know there was Black Dutch, right? Do we have to go back to the whole presentation? Who were these Jews? Who were these Moors? Who were these Huguenots? Who were these Protestants? Who were these so-called Dutch? Who was running the trade? There's the mercantile. Who was the merchants? Who was the pirates? Let's not forget all this. No choice but to go underground to become white in order to own land, keep their homes and survive, denying their Indian identity simply because it was the safest thing to do at the time. So a lot of times you'll notice that all of a sudden you're seeing white in your family census. All of a sudden you don't even know if these are your family or these are just a white slave owner. And I tell people when I get to that part of their genealogy, I'm telling you, this doesn't mean they're white, like pale skin. And a lot of times we end up keeping going farther back and we find the evidence of them being in a colored regiment in the Revolutionary War. They were labeled colored people. So we went through the hump, through the barrier in the 1800s. There's a barrier there you got to get through. All right. And then once you keep going, you see who these people really are. That's that barrier they don't want you to know about. I know a lot of you are stuck in that part, but there's a way to get over it. It's not easy. Sometimes it's impossible because, again, there is Indian in there. It's not always a bad thing to run into dead ends. It's not a bad thing. Most likely Indian when you run into dead ends. All right? Or these kind of people who are hiding crypto. There's a deeper history behind them that they're trying to hide in the census. This may have led them, especially the one to take on the term Black Dutch or Black Irish. Children, when they became the age to marry, may have been encouraged. May have, all right? May have. He's kind of like assuming a lot of things. May have been encouraged to seek out mates who were white or had more white or European heritage. The first generation of blending and reblending may have occurred after the 1840s and 1850s. The Northeast Mississippi Hills, where I was raised near Alabama, were considered fairly isolated until well in the 20th century. A few miles away in North Alabama are the Freedom Hills, which were even more isolated. He believes that many Chickasaw, Cherokee, as well as Creek descendants took refuge in these hills. We are known as the Hill people in this area. There's little doubt in my mind that many of the Hill people who claim the Black Dutch or Black Irish descent are actually more of Native American descent that they really know. And he could be true in many cases. In a lot of cases, he is right. In not every case. It always has been most interesting to me to travel the back roads of my home country, Itawamba, that borders Alabama, and notice the people. What is said to me is that many of the people don't know their heritage. I've heard associations of the term Black Dutch with the Black Forest in Germany. During the summer of 1996, I traveled to Germany on an education trip, and I asked many people about the term, but none of them had ever heard of it. On May 17, 1907, I visited the Oak Hill Indian Mountains Park and Museum located on County Road 187, just off Highway 157, 8 miles southeast of Moulton, Alabama. I copied the following quote that was displayed on the museum wall in large print. Before the Indian Removal Act in 1830, many of the Lawrence County Cherokee people were already mixed with white settlers. Now, were these people really white settlers? So that's what I'm saying. He believes, and I'm trying to tell you, there's a whole history that he might not be aware of here. This person who wrote this. All right. So he believes that they were already mixed with white settlers, but actually with Europeans. Doesn't mean they were white. And stayed in the hill country of the Warrior Mountains. They denied their ancestry and basically lived much of their lives in fear of being sent west. Full-bloods claimed to be Black Irish or Black Dutch, thus denying their rightful Indian blood. After being fully assimilated into the general population years later, these Irish Cherokee mixed blood descendants, all right, Irish Cherokee mixed blood descendants began reclaiming their Indian heritage in the land of the Warrior Mountains, Lawrence County, Alabama. During the 1880 U.S. Census, only 78 people claimed their Indian heritage. In 1990, over 2,000 individuals claimed Indian descent. Today, over 4,000 citizens are proud to claim their Indian heritage and are members of the Ichota Cherokee tribe. In all many hundred years in which the Indian communities has interacted with the European communities, who came to this new and wonderful country through intermarriage, many of our people are not likely to look Indian. But just because of their blood quantum has diminished, it does not diminish their ethnic pride or rights. The Black Dutch survive today in the hearts of many of the Southern Appalachian Hill people, a proud people with an elusive spirit who had to hide out, go underground, and conceal their identity to live another day. They never gave up. They never surrendered. Their drum beats for the elusive Black Dutch. My search continues. So yes, persons researching their genealogy, trying to figure it out. Again, there's a whole deep history here. And a lot of the times, these were actual Black Dutch, not just Cherokee. And we're not talking about just like Dutch. Remember, these are tags. Could have been a Sephardic Moorish person that was living in Holland. Again, the Huguenots, same thing. Quakers, Protestants. All right. So it wasn't just about hiding. A lot of these people were already hiding as they got here. They were crypto. They had to hide because of their religious beliefs. All right. So this was this article. I just wanted to read it. This is from 2006, right? Since then, we've learned a lot, right? Since 2006, we've learned a lot, right? Thanks, Jimmy Crane, for the article. So we're going to go on to, just bear with me. the main event. Main event. I know it's took me a long time to get to this part. I'm a little tired already, but I'm gonna keep going. I know you guys are enjoying this. I know you guys are enjoying this. All right. I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go boil some water so I can have some tea. Don't go anywhere, guys. Here's the music. All right, all right. Basil Breeze, thanks for holding it down while I went and boiled some water so I can make some tea for myself. Basil Breeze. Yeah. All right, so again, this is the book Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America. All right. And just want to remind everybody what we read earlier. Okay. When Chickasaw lands were returned to Spain in 1781, the Coopers, right? Remember the Coopers? What did they do? What did the Coopers do? They were Spaniards. They were Spanish. They were so-called Black Spanish crypto Jews, and they had a very good chameleon-like ability, right? A very good chameleon-like ability. The Coopers alternated between claiming to be British, Portuguese, French, Spanish, and American, and gave their origin variously as Virginia, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Kentucky. They explained the Indian admixture in the family as Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Black Dutch, and Black Irish. Coopers considered Melungeon surname as white, so let's not forget that, right? Let's get the whole thing into perspective. Let's get the whole thing into perspective. What does it say here? It says that one of the authors, let me see. Oh, sorry. It says here, one of the ancestors of co-author spouse Teresa Panther Yates, the family intermarried with Tuscarora and Cherokee Indians and was later known as Black Dutch. All right, Black Dutch. So these Sephardic crypto Jews, right, intermarried with who? Tuscarora and Cherokee, and they became known as what? Black Dutch. All right, so you got to embrace both those lines, not just the Indian one. Both lines. There's a deep history, maybe, if you go back on that European side. You never know who you might be related to, what is owed to you on that end, too. You never know if you make it back home. Just ask War Chief. Just ask Kiowa. You might end up back home with a lot of these people. All right. All right, so we're at the book In Search of the Black Dutch by James Pylant. Now, a little background story behind this. I'm not going to show you the emails, but I went to the website where they were supposedly had this article here about the Black Dutch, and it was missing. The website was empty. It wasn't there. I saw a contact email, so I contacted them and I said, hey, what's up? Where's the book? Where's the article? Like, why does it feel like you guys purposely not posting it? And, you know, he said, oh, it's just under construction right now. And we're trying to get a PDF version. We'll try to repost it and all this stuff. You know, honestly, I'm going to be honest, I didn't buy it. I thought he was just trying to, you know, throw me off. He said he will eventually put it on, you know, and, you know, he said he will let me know. And, you know, 6, 7, 8 months later, the man kept his word, or the person kept his word. He sent me the website where I can go download it and buy it. He put it up just for me to download. First it was PayPal, and I told him, oh, my PayPal's blocked. Sorry, man, I can't buy it. Is there another way? And then he went out of his way again to put up a credit card thing so I can be able to pay with my debit card. And so, you know, I was able to get it. It's not cheap. I'll show you guys the link where you can buy this book. All right, at the end of this presentation. So stay tuned. I'm also going to share this PDF, most likely with my Patreons, if you're a Patreon. All right, and again, this is by James Pilent. And it says here in the preface, let's just read a little bit of the preface. It says, one of the enduring mysteries of the American genealogy is the ethnic identification of a group widely and vicariously referred to as the Black Dutch, wrote the editors of the National Genealogical Society Quarterly in 1994. Spurred by Virginia Easley DeMarcy's study of the triracial isolate groups in the same periodical 2 years earlier, the National Genealogical Society Quarterly launched this Black Dutch project with the intention of releasing the results in the periodical's pages, if and when a consolidated study should provide a more definite answer to the enigma. However, no such results were published. Coincidentally, I had started a similar endeavor in 1998 by placing advertisements and announcements in newspapers, genealogical magazines, genealogical society journals, and with the aid and support of reference consultant at the Family Historical Library in Salt Lake City, Utah, I collected data submitted by family genealogists who had traditional Black Dutch ancestry. The NGS Quarterly Project submission guidelines asked for primary source documentation relating to the ethnicity of the Black Dutch ancestor, while explaining that it too could not conduct research for any individual participants. I faced a similar challenge in collecting information for my project, as most of the responders could provide a few genealogical details. A survey of these responses identifying 131 American families claiming Black Dutch ancestry, as well as an overview and discussion of theories of the origin of Black Dutch, appeared as a 19th-page article in Search of the Black Dutch, an American genealogical magazine in March of 1997. All right, and that was the article I was looking for from 1997. More than 2 decades after its release, the article has been updated, revised, and expanded as a separate publication, offering information on additional Black Dutch families and newly discovered sources. I am deeply indebted to the many family historians who shared data on their ancestors. Appreciation is also extended to those who assisted in this study, namely Raymond G. Matthews of the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, Dr. John Terrence Golden of the Palatine Immigrant, Russell P. Baker of the Arkansas History Commission, Arlene H. Eagle, PhD, and the late Myra Vanderpool Gormley, CG, as well as Gary C. Toms for his editorial review. So that was James Plylin, the author, and thank you very much for this article, James, and this information. Again, this is for fair use, education purposes only. In Search of the Black Dutch, we're going to post a link to this book so you can buy it yourself. It's very cheap and affordable, good information. It says the Black Dutch have long been an enigma in American genealogy. Their descendants are widely reported, yet no authoritative definition exists for this intriguing term. Many claims are made about the origins of the Black Dutch, but are any valid? Clues to the genealogical mystery were sought by contacting their descendants. Americans with a family tradition of Scot-Irish descent at least know that their ancestors were 17th century Scottish settlers in Northern Ireland, but such definitives is not the case when family folklore speaks of Black Dutch background. Descendants are uncertain of the compelling term and meaning, and genealogists are equally puzzled about its origin. I can't find anyone who has heard of the Black Dutch, wrote syndicated newspaper advice columnist Amy Vanderbilt in 1967, responding to a reader's inquiry. In the 6th edition of the Melungeons, author Bonnie Baum, while not classifying the Black Dutch as synonymous with the subject of her book, offered a guess that the Black Dutch were descendants of Germanic race who were absorbed into the blood and culture of the Mediterranean people, whom they, as the barbarians, conquered during the early centuries. All right. So she offered her guess. That's what she's saying. They're trying to explain the swartiness. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to explain the complexion. So that was her guess. Yet it's highly unlikely the 19th century Black Dutch in America was self-identifying with the ancient ethnicity. The Dictionary of American Regional English defines Black Dutch, also Black Dutchmen, as a dark-complexioned people of uncertain origin. All right? The Dictionary of American Regional English defines Black Dutch as a dark-complexioned people of uncertain origin. Of uncertain origin. All right? Jewish. One of the more widely circulated explanations of Black Dutch links them to the Sephardic Jews whose ancestors lived in Spain until their expulsion from Spanish Inquisition in 1492. All right, so it's not just about being Cherokee and Choctaw. I know a lot of people want to just hear that and just want it to be that. I know that a lot of the so-called Cherokee and Choctaw did use that term so they wouldn't be relocated. But why did they choose that term? Who are the Cherokee? What did that term Cherokee come about? Because it didn't exist before Europeans got here. All right. One source elaborates the Sephardic Jewish theory by saying that they relocated to the Netherlands during the Middle Ages. So now they're saying this is a theory when we just went over all the information and we know the Sephardic Jews named Amsterdam the New Jerusalem. That was their haven. We got the whole history. There's no going back on this. All right, so it's not a theory. Yeah, they did end up in the Netherlands, these Sephardic Jews. It says black refers to the hair, dark hair, in some cases slightly darker complexion, which was their Spanish heritage, it's claimed. So they're trying to, again, explain the ethnic part, the so-called black part, the complexion. They're trying to explain to say, oh, it must be the dark hair they're talking about, or maybe a slightly darker complexion than a white European. The Black Dutch eventually became Catholic in terms of religion, and then Dutch Reformed. It was these later generation people who migrated to the West Indies and elsewhere later settling in America. In the West Indies? Who's in the West Indies? Raymond G. Matthews, U.S.-Canada reference consultant at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, Utah, in discussing this claim in the Dutch Family Heritage Society newsletter stated, if these people were Dutch, one would expect to find some reference to it in the records of New Netherland. He reported that Rabbi Malcolm H. Stem, fellow of the American Society of Genealogists and author of First American Jewish Families, in all of his years of experience has never come across the term Black Dutch. In fact, Matthew adds, none of the surnames of these Jewish families in the Caribbean are at all like those that have been reported as being Black Dutch. Now, remember, a lot of these people that are coming in as Dutch to New York and all these people, they didn't have to claim Black Dutch. It wasn't a thing to claim to put black in front of Dutch. You didn't put a crayon color. You were just Dutch, remember? Because who were the majority people in that time coming in as Europeans? They were also so-called black. They didn't have to identify themselves as Black Dutch. That happened on later on, and for specific reasons. In fact, Matthews asked none of the the surnames. Matthews concluded that it is doubtful that the Black Dutch were of Jewish or Dutch heritage. He doesn't know, right? He didn't do the history. Matthews concluded, the late Rabbi Samson Aaron Shane, D.D. of Temple Charades, Shomayim in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a folklore scholar, was unfamiliar with the expression of Black Dutch. Dr. Arlene H. Eagle of Genealogical Institute in Salt Lake City stated, absolutely no Jewish culture tie-in was found during an in-depth genealogical study of Polly Shone Jack, who, according to family members, was a Black Dutch. All right. So maybe her specific one. So what Jewish are they talking about? Are they talking about Ashkenazic Jews? What are they talking about? Now, was she a Muslim? Is that an Arabic name? So are you just going into the Jewish part? All right. So let us do our own research on her. Let's see what we find. All right. Because we just got the whole drop. We were here for about 2 hours before we started reading this, right? Spanish Dutch, another fanciful. All right. So now they're trying to see this book. Okay. I'm not going to say it, but I haven't read this book. I just wanted to read it out with you guys today. All right, so they're trying to explain away a lot of things here. So another fanciful, widely circulated explanation offers that the Black Dutch were those Netherlands or dark complexion who were descendants of the Spanish who occupied the Netherlands in the 15th century and intermarried with the natives who were blondes. All right, so a lot of this stuff, I'm going to tell you, it's all of the above. A lot of this stuff is all of the above. Yes, it's also these so-called people, Spaniards, because Spain occupied Holland. Did you know that? Spain occupied Holland in the 1500s, 1600s for a while. It says, these intermarriages supposedly occurred between 1555 and 1609. The period Spanish soldiers were stationed in the Netherlands. During the 60 years they were stationed in the southern part of Holland, fraternization with Dutch women produced dark-skinned children. So look what they're admitting here. They're telling you that the Spaniards were dark-skinned. And that's how they're saying Dutch became black. But we know how to dodge the hijack because there was indigenous people there who were of color too. The Saxons, a type of the Saxons. We already got this in my Swarthy Europe in Aboriginal. The Saxons were Swarthy. There was white Saxons and black Saxons. We got the black Danes. We got the black German tribes. They can't hijack us right now with these theories. They try to explain away history. We got the background, and that's why I wanted to read and recap all that stuff to you guys before we read this. So at least they're admitting that the Dutch became black because they were what? Fraternization or fraternalizing with Spaniards, and that's how the women produced dark-skinned children, which were the beginning of the Black Dutch. This over-publicized theory, most often found as tidbit in Genealogical Society newsletters throughout the 1990s, was unwittingly misled many families, historians, by relabeling descendants of inhabitants in Bax region of Flanders, then Spanish Netherlands, as Black Dutch. Though historically, there's no tradition of this term. The Dutch government Central Bureau for Genealogy was established in 1945 as a state archive, all right? So that term didn't exist. It didn't need to exist again. Most of these people were of color up there. So in 1945, this place, the Central Bureau of Genealogy, was established as a state archive and genealogical organization. It houses original documents acquired by the Dutch government and genealogies of Jews in Holland. The Bureau is unable to explain the meaning of the Black Dutch. Really, they don't want to explain the meaning of the Black Dutch. Well, don't worry, we already did, and we're doing it. A century before the Spanish theory spread through the swapped-out circuit of Genealogical Society newsletters, a Cincinnati journalist wrote that the New York Dutch, who are sometimes called here, I am told, Black Dutch, because they have black hair and black eyes, as most Hollanders have, and are therefore unlike a High Dutch or German up the Rhine who speak a different language. The Black Dutch are not only ones identified as descendants of 16th century Spaniards. According to the American Irish Historical Society of New York, the Black Irish were descendants of Spanish Armada survivors. All right. And if you don't know, when they try to talk about Black Celts or Black Irish, again, they try to blame the Spaniards for going up there and raping all the women, or just mating or fraternalizing, as they said, with the women. So again, they're admitting at least that the Spaniards were black people, right? These survivors, according to the society, settled along the Irish coast, intermarrying with the Irish natives. Many of their descendants were rather striking in appearance, with fair complexions, jet black hair, and blue eyes. All right. Dutch Indonesian. Once isolated report states, so this is another term that the term was used in Indonesia as well, if you guys don't know. So they're going to explain this right here in their way. Dutch Indonesia, one isolated report says that descendants of Dutch Indonesian intermarriage call themselves Black Dutch. They are Dutch Indonesian. As Dutch subject citizens, they immigrated to Holland, and from there to the US only after arriving in Holland, where they called Black Dutch. However, this mass immigration occurred between 1949 and 1962, when tens of thousands of Dutch Indonesians arrived in the Netherlands, more than a century after the Black Dutch reported in America. In 1967, Johan van Steenbergen of the Dutch Refugee Fellowship in San Diego, California, described the Black Dutch as the Caribbean Netherlands, identifying them as the mid-19th century offspring of blue-eyed, blonde-haired Dutchmen and their formerly enslaved wives, descendants from early slaves brought to the islands and the Guianas by the Dutch, French, and British merchant ships from West Africa. So Dutch to hijack. You guys already know what they're talking about. Really. So these Dutch, French, and British, those are all tags, remember? Remember, when you remove those tags, what do you end up fighting? We already read this. Let's not forget. When you remove those tags, Dutch, French, and British, or English, what do you find? Iberian, Sephardic, Moorish people. Their languages are Papiamento. Papiamento, their offsprings are brown, they said, sometimes very dark-skinned, are called criollos, he wrote. Just like a Cape Verdean, right? And I'll tell you straight up, based on my research, most of the Cape Verdeans are Sephardic Moorish people with American Indians. The whalers, the East Coast Indians, they were whaling, they were going on these ships with them. All right? So, Papamiento, they speak Papamiento, one of the islands in Cape Verde. Papamiento, those in Brazil In Portuguese-speaking places, they know what I'm talking about. Papimento, Mr. Papi Criollo. I speak Cape Verde. Mr. Papi Criollo, yo. Okay? I grew up with Cape Verdeans in Boston. I know who they are. Their languages are Papimento, Aruba, Curaçao, Bonaire, and Taki-Taki in Suriname. They are called West Indians, Creoles, or in general, Black Dutch. Again, these are actually Sephardic Jews and Moors. We got the whole history of who was colonizing these islands. Why? Why were they settling there? Where were they being pushed from? Where were they being persecuted from? And what were they doing in these West Indian countries, right? Sugar plantations. Remember, sugar plantations. Who was running that? Who had the monopoly? All right. Remember, maybe the author doesn't know. This is written way back in 1997. They're trying to add, they're still going with their African and white European narratives. So, they're trying to make sense of what they're finding. And they did a pretty good job for 1997, don't you guys think? All right. Much love and respect to Cinnamon Star 808. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So they were called Creoles in the West Indies, huh? Yet reports of the Black Dutch in mid-19th century North America have neither historical nor cultural correlation to the Caribbean Netherlands. He hasn't done his research. Many of these Sephardic so-called Dutch people, French Huguenots, English, ended up in the South, eventually, in the Carolinas, in Virginia, in New York, Massachusetts, Maryland. We got that earlier, Maryland, right? The Coopers, right? They were Spaniards, right? Sephardic Jews, Coopers. What did they end up doing? Tobacco farms, plantations. And it says here African, right? So we're gonna dodge the hijack big time here. I don't know what they're gonna tell us here, but we already know. Be on your guard. It says here African. A Dutch family surnamed Silly immigrants to the U.S. in the 1800s, settling in Marion County, Iowa. One of her sons was nicknamed Coon, probably because of the derogative term for blacks. Probably, he don't know why. According to grand niece, because of his appearance, which was black. There are no other blacks in the family, though some have beautiful mahogany complexions, but light eyes. William Seeley, a shoemaker, and his wife Adriana Weischer. Seeley, native Hollanders. All right, they have mahogany complexions. They're saying with light eyes. They're native Hollanders, and their children are consistently listed in both census and vital records as white. However, the expression of Black Dutch is not found in this family. In another family, we find this curious tradition. My mother said many times that when her grandfather got off the boat from the Netherlands, that he was so dark that people thought he was a Negro, but he was a Black Dutch. He wasn't a Negro. He's just a Black Dutch. He was so dark that they thought he was a Negro. How do you think somebody's a Negro? According to Norman R. Peters of the Afro-American Historical and Genealogical Society, Black Dutch means those blacks in what is now New York City during the rule of the Dutch before the English took over. Oh, really? So before the English got there, the Black Dutch were the actual Dutch that were in New York. Remember who these Dutch that settled in New York? They were Sephardic and Moorish people that coming in from Amsterdam and coming in from Brazil. They were being kicked out of there by the Catholics who were in town. The Portuguese had kicked them out. They kicked out the Dutch and the Sephardic Jews and the Huguenots and the Protestants that were there running it, the sugar plantations, and then took over their operations. They had to end up in New York, a lot of them, Virginia, South Carolina, Curaçao, Jamaica. They ended up in a lot of these places. All right? So he's saying that the Black Dutch means those blacks that was what is now New York City during the rule of the Dutch before the English took over. Many of the descendants left New York for western Pennsylvania and Kentucky. The Dutch slave trade brought their ancestors to New Amsterdam as early as 1626, some being transported from a Spanish, Portuguese, or Dutch possession. All right. Should I read that again? Many of these descendants, they went where? To Pennsylvania and Kentucky. So their ancestors, the Dutch slave trade, who were they trading as slaves? Did it say anything about African, them trading Africans? They're talking about Sephardic Jews, they're talking about Holland people, they're talking about Dutch people, right? The Dutch slave trade brought their ancestors to New Amsterdam. As early as 1626, some being transported from Spanish, Portuguese, Dutch possession. They're not talking about African people here. The Ramapo Mountain people of Bergen and Passaic counties, New Jersey, described themselves as part Indian or Indian white, claiming the Tuscarora Indians among their ancestors. Derogatively known as Jackson Whites or Jacks, the Ramapo Mountain people have been more specifically identified as free mulattoes of Dutch, Negro, and Native American descent. Dutch mulattoes, mulattoes of Dutch, free mulattoes of Dutch. They had bought farms in the Hackensack River Valley after later leaving when white neighbors harassed them and then settled in Ramapo Mountain area. The Ramapo Mountain people descend from groups of free blacks, identifying with their Native American bloodline to distinguish themselves from the enslaved. William DeFries of Ringwood, New Jersey, a descendant of the Ramapo Mountain people, was considered an authority on their dialect, which the white Dutch called Nexer Dutch or Negro Dutch. All right. I just want to remind everybody that to not distinguish yourself from an enslaved person, that doesn't just mean that they weren't just enslaving Indians, right? And we know it wasn't Africans. We know hundreds of thousands of these Europeans, these so-called black Europeans, came in as indentured servants. They came in as convicts. They came in doing time. They were enslaved. They were brought here by force. So it wasn't always, that didn't always mean an Indian, that, oh, I didn't want to be identified, so I identified as an Indian, because the Indians were free. Why would you identify as a Dutch? You had to prove, okay, did you come in as a wealthy Dutch or did you come in as an indentured servant? Oh, no, I'm Indian. No, I've been free. I've been here this whole time. Much love and respect, Tales of the Chrysalis. Appreciate all your support. Thank you. Genealogists have suggested that the Black Dutch were an offshoot of a mystery people. They're so mysterious, these people. In the Appalachia known as the Melungeons, identified by ethnologists as triracial isolates. In the 18th and early 19th century, free mulattoes of black-white descent intermarried not only among themselves, but also with families of known Indian white descent, explained Dr. Virginia Easley DeMarsh in her groundbreaking article, Very Slightly Mixed Triracial Isolate Families of the Upper South, a genealogical study, published in the National Genealogical Society Quarterly. However, Dr. DeMarsh does not name the Black Dutch among the larger enclaves of triracial isolate communities, nor does her study appended list of 141 family surnames found in triracial groups, parallel reported Black Dutch family names, with the exception of one key triracial isolate surname Collins. Now remember, not all these people who were Black Europeans or Black Dutch or Sephardic Jews or Moorish people, Muslim cryptos, Huguenots, not all these people ever labeled themselves Black Dutch. So of course they're not gonna come up as Black Dutch. They didn't need to. So these people are looking for only specific people who are labeling themselves Black Dutch. Leaving out a lot of people who are actually Sephardic Jews and Moors. Their surnames prove it. We went over it in many videos in the past. We went over it, especially in the Huguenot video. A lot of those names, right? In that book, Jews and Muslims, right? Jews and Muslims. Let's just go back real quick. We went over this in this book. Let's not forget, all right? Jews and Muslims in British colonial America. It broke down all these surnames, what they really are and where they originate. So when we're reading this book and they're telling us, well, we didn't find the term Black Dutch everywhere, that doesn't mean these people weren't Sephardic Jews or Moors or Muslims, just because they weren't referring to themselves as Black Dutch. So Tennessee-born Spencer Collins told his niece Louis Rani Collins Carter that they were Black Dutch. She never questioned him, and the rest of the family never talked about their past, said a family member. As a 7-year-old in Davidson County, Tennessee, Spencer Collins was recorded in the household of his parents, Seaman and Lorinda Collins, and 3 siblings in the 1880 federal census, with the numerator listing the family as mulatto. The same designation was found a decade earlier for Simeon and wife Lorena, before they became parents in the 1870 census in Wilson County, Tennessee. 2 years earlier, when Simeon Collins and Lorena Temples were wedded in Rutherford County, they were listed as colored. The same census racial classification was given in Wilson County in 2 previous census schedules for 12-year-old Simeon in 1860 and as a year old in 1850. Also in 1850, 2-year-old Lorena Temple appeared in Joseph Temple's household with the designation of mulatto, as were the others in her family. Yet by the time of Ronnie Collins Carter's birth in 1913, the Collins family had relocated to Ardmore, Oklahoma, where they were listed in the 1920 census as white. So colored people, mulatto people, eventually be known as white. As white. And Reese Peace, and that's very true. They don't know a lot of the history. A lot of them do, and they don't want to. They keep it of a secret. They keep it as a secret, and they don't go going through your background genealogy. Don't do it. It's not important. Stay away from that. And this happens in a lot of families. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. Remember, the term Cherokee didn't exist before Europeans came here. So they were listed as white eventually, right? These people of color. Now look what he's showing us. Now he's showing us light-skinned people, right? So is this what you want us to believe they were calling Black Dutch? How could these people pass as black? So they were being classified as mulatto, she's saying, right? Their grandson Spencer Collins claimed to be Black Dutch. Says here, Cynthia Groham, pictured with her husband, John Harvey, vehemently denied that she was Indian and declared that she was Black Dutch. Well, maybe she was Dutch. Edward Ned Mosingo, Richmond County, Virginia, was a Negro man, but most of his descendants were considered white by 1790. Ooh, yay. The few times that anyone dared to mention that Edward was a Negro, the statement was politely ignored. Wrote Joe Mosingo, of latter generations, and the filler on a Pontico Run, An African Captive, His White Descendants, and A Search for Family. Dodge the hijack. The author also told one of Edward's descendants, who was always told that the Mosingos were Black Dutch, explaining that she understood it referred to Indians who said that they were Black Dutch to stay off reservations. Native American. Grogan, another triracial isolate surname, as identified by Bonnie Bond, the Melungeons, also reported as Black Dutch. Cynthia Grogan, wife of John Harvey, Polk County, Tennessee, vehemently denied that she was an Indian and declared she was a Black Dutch. State descendants, the Grogans, migrated to Missouri and settled in Polk County by 1860, the year the family were listed in the federal census as white, as they were a decade later. In Cedar County in 1870, 6 children were dead in the household, including 9-year-old Sarah. Your grandmother, Sarah Harvey, was a near full-blood Native American as could be. Clarence Harvey wrote to Sarah's granddaughter, the Nancy Depew, in 1939. The Grogans were Cherokees. The Harveys were Creeks, he added. In reverse situation of people of color using Germanic-sounding terms to explain their ethnicity, descendants of a German immigrant reported a Black Dutch tradition to conceal Native American descent. Dean Hardesty told us of such tradition in his family. My grandmother Nancy Jane Alspa always said she was Black Dutch. My grandfather James Hollis Foster would laugh and say he was an Indian. This was a little family joke because my father, his brothers and sisters had features almost twin-like to the Bushy Head family in Cherokee. Bushy Head family in Cherokee, huh? We always accepted this as what children of Indian descent in Tennessee in the early days were taught to say to keep from suffering the fate of other Indians they had known or had heard about. A native of Franklin County, Tennessee, Nancy Jane Alspa, descended from Palatines from the Rhineland, Dean Hardesty also told of his interview with the widow of Chief Calvin McGee. Chief Calvin McGee of the Creek Nation east of the Mississippi. I'm not sure, but I believe this Topcast, I believe, an ancestor of Topcast right there. I believe, I'm not sure. I think he mentioned it to me. Married into a Indian woman. This person, all right, who's this Calvin McGee, chief of the Creek Nation. McGee is Irish, right? McGee Irish, Creek Nation east of the Mississippi in Admiral, Alabama. She talked about what difficulty some of the Creeks were having proving their lineage because of their grandparents had claimed to be Black Dutch in the past. Reportedly, dark complexioned Joseph Black Lemore, born in Tifton, Georgia in 1870, didn't want people to know he was Black Dutch because he was afraid of being sent to a reservation, said a descendant. There are many other such stories telling of an alleged Native American ancestor who relabeled themselves as Black Dutch and Black Irish, hiding in plain sight. So again, one of the most common things to ask is, how can you, first of all, use the term Black Dutch and Black Irish to hide your why you were dark skinned, why you were, because I'm a Black Dutch. That's why because I'm Black. There must be a lot of Black Dutch and Black Irish around if you're gonna use that term. And again, we know there was Black Dutch and Black Irish. It's not just about people hiding being Indian. It was a common thing to know Black Dutch or Black Deutsch Germans, because that's how you say Deutsch. And, you know, that's how you were saying German. Deutsch, a Black Deutsch, a Black German, or Black Irish. They were Black Irishes, right? We saw the Virginia colonial soldiers book describing the Black Irish complexion in Ireland, a swarthy Irish, and a brown complexion Netherlands or Holland person. This is real. It's not just about Indians. There's a whole history here, especially with the McGee. That's an Irish surname. He became chief. All right, there's a real history here, and this is not to put him down. I'm actually making hope people can embrace this history too. All right. In 1981, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, U.S. Department of Interior, issued a recommendation that the Lower Muskogee Creek tribe east of the Mississippi not be acknowledged as an Indian tribe for lack of genealogical evidence to support claims of descendancy from an historical tribe or tribes which combine and function as a single autonomous entity after the 1830s, as explained further. The basic position taken by the petition concerning the historical existence of groups between the time of Creek removal and its organization in 1972 is that it grew out of Creek communities, which remain in western Florida, southern Alabama, and southern Georgia after the removal of the Creek Nation. These communities are said to have survived clandestine by hiding their identity as Indian, example, claiming to be Black Dutch or similar, and operating under the cover of family gatherings and churches. Essentially, no information was developed which could confirm this position with regard to members of this group. All right. And I just want to remind everybody, we went over it again earlier. What happened? What happened to those 350 Black Spaniards that were left behind, Black Caribs that were left behind? What happened to the soldiers? Some of the soldiers, he brought 600 of them. What happened to them? Who did they mixed in with? Did a lot of these become known as Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw by the 1600s? Remember, that was 100 years later. 350 people left behind, Black Europeans. 100 years later, all traces of their history is gone. They're just known as Cherokee, Creek, Choctaw, Seminole. Who are these Maroons? Who are these Maroons running away, mixing in with the American Indians? Were they all just Indians? No. There's a real history here to study. A lot of those were Black Europeans, Black Latinos, Black Irish, Black Dutch, Black Huguenots, all this stuff. They were also running away. We got the runaway ads of a Black Irish person running away, Black Scotland, Black Englishman running away. Similarly, in 2000, the Department of Interior in Washington, D.C. received a letter of intent to petition for a federal acknowledgement from a group called the Cherokees of Lawrence County, Tennessee, Sugar Creek Band of the Southeastern Cherokee Confederacy, Inc., also known as the Central Band of Cherokee. The group claimed descent from Cherokees remaining in Tennessee after the tribe ceded its lands by treaty in 1806, or from tribal members who either evaded or escaped removal during the Trail of Tears in the 1830s and returned to their lands in the Lawrence County vicinity. A subsequent letter from the group dated 20 February 2005 stated that the Cherokee in the area went silent and hid their race out of fear. Black Dutch was invented. The Department of the Interior responded that this petition needs to describe how the hidden Black Dutch and the non-Indian individuals merged and became the petitioners group, specifically that the petition must identify individuals labeled as such and provide a rationale of how individuals perceived as Black Dutch maintain a group identification through time. A final determination made in 2012 ruled that the Central Band of Cherokee did not meet mandatory criteria for acknowledgement under the Code of Federal Regulations. In a report of his findings of group's petition, Larry Echo Hawk, Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, wrote, although these descent reports illustrate the family lines of various members, they clearly do not demonstrate descent from the historical tribe. Where is the genealogy? All right, where's the genealogy? In fact, they do just the opposite. They show that the petitioners claim ancestors immigrated from the British Isles, France, and Germany over long periods to the American colonies, in particular to Virginia, the Carolinas, and Georgia, and other time their descendants moved as individuals or small family groups to Tennessee. Neither these descent reports nor other evidence in the record show that the immigrants married into Cherokee tribe or were otherwise associated with it or any other tribe. All right? That's not me saying this. And I've been trying to, a lot of the times, I'm trying to tell you, and I don't get upset at me, anybody. Please don't get upset at me. Please don't think I'm trying to make you un-Indian. But a lot of the time, these Black Europeans, they call themselves Indians. They took on Indian ways. They married Indians, yes. And they left out the European part and just became known as Cherokee, chalked the 5 civilized tribes. Remember, what made these people civilized and whose eyes did they become civilized? Was it always about doing treaties with white men? A Black Indian doing a treaty with a white man, doing treaties, 5 civilized? No. A lot of the times they were doing treaties with their own kin. A lot of these people became chiefs. A lot of these people became prominent people in the tribes, and they made decisions and they made treaties with other Europeans, a lot of the time Black Europeans, most of the time Black Europeans. What made the 5 civilized tribes civilized? And whose eyes? All right. So a lot of the time, you want to, a lot of people label like the Gullah Geechee and all that. They're trying to say it's African and all that. And there's no African there. But I bet you there's Sephardic, Moorish, so-called Black Dutch ancestry in there. And this is what I'm trying to explain to everybody. There's a real history here. There's a real history here, and it's not personal. All right. So loyal, we're going to get to all that, man. We're going to get to, because it's not just one answer. You can't just say, oh, white. What is white? What is white? White can come from many different things, not just one origin. All right. And Jeremiah, he got the drop. He got the playlist. You got to get in the classroom. It's not like, in college, when you go to college, you can't say to the professor, hey, can you just teach me right now? Like, I don't want to go through the whole process of learning and watching every presentation and stuff. Well, there's a lot to understand. It's not as easy as yes and no or black and white. It's not as easy as just saying crayon colors. Again, a lot of these people, when they did the genealogy, and a lot of the genealogy I'm doing, and and it's okay, because when we do the genealogy, when I do it with somebody, they embrace what they're finding out, and we go from record to record, and we show, hey, look, man, this person is European, man, and look, they're of color. They're of color. They didn't mix at all. These 2 people are Black Europeans. That's one of your lines. That's one of your lines. They didn't mix, Now, whether they were from here in ancient times and you want to, well, we're the ancient ones. Well, that's a whole different thing, right? And we're going to show that too. We're going to show if they are. Who was actually from here? How did they end up? How did these, who are these ancient Irish, ancient French, ancient, Britons? What is this Armorican language they're speaking? This Gaelic Armorican language? What does all that mean? So a whole lot we still got to understand All right. So again, I just want to read this. Neither these descents report nor other evidence in the records show that the immigrants married into Cherokee tribe or were otherwise associated with it or any other tribe. So a lot of these so-called Black Dutch were not Indian, and they weren't white. Family genealogist Marcia Pittman McFarland described her former husband's family, who called themselves Black Dutch, as dark-haired and dark-complexioned. When her ex-father-in-law Albert Clayton Elliott registered for the Selected Service System in 1942, he was described as brown-eyed, brown-haired, and dark-complexioned. He identified as white, though. As 2-year-old, Abner was enumerated in the house of his parents, Frank and Ella Elliott, on the rolls of the 1900 federal census in Choctaw Nation Indian Territory. He was dark complexioned, but he claimed white. He and his parents and sister were natives of Indian Territory, and their race was recorded as white, but they were dark complexion. Abner's father, Frank or Abner Franklin Elliott, who claimed to be 1/8 Choctaw, 1/8 Choctaw, 1/8, just 1/8, enrolled in the Choctaw Nation in 1900. However, his enrollment was rejected. In his application, Abner Franklin Elliott stated that both parents, James Elliott and Mary Landers Elliott, claimed Choctaw. In 1900, his parents were farming in Choctaw Nation. The federal census that year recorded Tennessee as James Elliott's birthplace, while that of his wife, Mary, was given it as Indian Territory. All right. Eleanor Stone Harley left, and her daughter Ruth Whalen, who claimed Black Dutch ancestry. Those two people do not look alike to me. I don't know whether to trust this. That doesn't look like her. That's her daughter? Hey, maybe, right? Maybe. Apart from all these drawings and pictures that we can't verify, we know what we're talking about. We know when we're talking about copper-colored tribes of America, and we know what we're talking about when we're talking about Black Europeans or Sephardic Jews and Moorish Muslims, crypto Huguenots, Protestants. We know what we're talking about. A native of Bedford County, because this book is not going to really show you. They're not going to really show you the pictures. All right. Hold on real quick. Okay. So you see the one on the right. That's a Black European. They're not ever going to show you this stuff. They don't want to put that in your head that they could look like this too. But this is a person, this is from a drawing from the Netherlands. That's a royal person in the Netherlands. I got right there. Yes, that's an actual Black Dutch on the right. That's a historic painting. So a native of Bedford County, Virginia, Eleanor Stone Hardy was identified by descendants as Black Dutch or part Dutch. Her daughter Ruth Wallen spoke freely of their ancestry being Black Dutch and French. Eleanor Race was consistently listed as white in federal census enumerations. 1850, 1860, 1870, and 1880. So the person right here on the left, she was being listed as white in all these census. There's a Dutch and French ancestry there. So is she really Indian? She's claiming Choctaw. Or is this one of those that bought their way in? Yeah, I don't know about her. I don't think that's her daughter. Show us the dad, right? Show us the dad. So let's keep reading. She migrated to Texas, where she married a widower, Thomas Jefferson Walling, in Rusk County, Texas, in 1854. Genealogical research traces her ancestry from English settlers in Virginia and Maryland in the 17th century, though the family traditions claim of French has been confirmed with the discovery of their descent from the Huguenot Reno family, Stafford County, Virginia. Who's the Huguenots? What's this whitewashing going on? Who's the Huguenots? So she's English, Dutch, and Huguenot, right? But she's Choctaw. She's enlisted in the Choctaw Nation. She's a Huguenot. She's English. She has French in her. She's considered a Black Dutch, but she's claiming Choctaw. Yet the source of the family Black Dutch background remains a mystery, right? But they know she's a Huguenot, and they know that her ancestors were English settlers in Virginia. That doesn't mean she was white or they were white people from England. Eleanor's husband, Thomas Jefferson Wallen, claimed one named Cherokee ancestry. I am convinced that my grandfather was pure Anglo-Saxon. So even this person is saying he said he was Cherokee, but he was straight up Anglo-Saxon. He was straight up Anglo-Saxon. A grandson strongly emphasized in 1940 disregarding his uncle's sworn statement of the family's Cherokee descent to the U.S. courts of claim more than 30 years earlier. Ruth Wallen's use of Black Dutch to describe her family's ancestry is unlikely to have been done so to disguise Native American ancestry, as she wrote of her father's Indian-proof papers. Ruth Walling also did not speak ashamedly or in hushed tones of her Black Dutch ancestry, in sharp contrast to Stephanie Rosebird's own experience with the term in light, bright, and damp, near white, biracial, triracial culture in America. Bird tells us of a visit in 1990 with an aunt who leaned over and, even though we were alone, whispered behind her hand, "We're Black Dutch, you know." In another family, the term had an entirely different connotation. This was always said with considerable pride, as if being Black Dutch was a badge of distinction. There are other instances where claims of Black Dutch and Native American ancestry were found in the same family, again without sense of secrecy. The whole Morgan generation claimed to be half Indian and part Black Dutch, said Margaret Teague Parton Loveday of Copeland Creek, Sevier County, Tennessee, in 1939 of her maternal roots. Born in Missouri 1843, Lavinia Ann Gunter was the daughter of Major William T. Gunter and Cynthia Melinda Franks Gunter, who resided in Jackson County, Alabama. At the onset of the Civil War, Lavinia Ann married Charles M. Haley. The Haley's grandchildren said that she was of Black Dutch and Cherokee descent. When Lavinia Ann died, leaving young children, her mother, Cynthia Franks Gunter, moved into Haley family's home. It's thought that since Cynthia had an active presence in the early years of her grandchildren's lives, she was the source of their Cherokee and Black Dutch tradition, referring to specifically to her own mother, Elizabeth Bott Franks. Genealogical research by descendant traces the German Vaughn's to Virginia's Sheboygan Valley, where the immigrant ancestor John Paul Vaughn settled in 1744. All right, so these people claiming Indian again, when they did the genealogical research, they turned out to be Germans, German immigrants. That doesn't mean they were white. That doesn't mean they didn't go through a middle passage. That doesn't mean they weren't cramped up in a chip. That doesn't mean they weren't treated like servants and sold and had an indenture. All right. So again, everybody's got to do an individual genealogy. Now again, they want to keep showing us light skin, weird these pictures. Who are all these people? Lavinia Ann Gunter Haley and her family. So remember, she was German, but they were claiming Cherokee. She was says Lavinia Ann Hunter Haley and her father, Major William T. Hunter. Family tradition says she was Black Dutch and Cherokee descent. Black Dutch as a catch-all phrase and a derogatory term. My grandmother told me that her father was Pennsylvania Black Dutch, wrote Suzanne Benning. They were coal miners. Her grandmother told her in the evening when they came up from the mines, they were covered in coal dust, making them appear to be black-skinned. Oh, shoot. So they're black-skinned because of the coal. My grandmother told some of the grandchildren that we are Black Dutch, stating that meant of the working class of people, reported Dorothy Hodges. Solon Bolon Reeves was often told by his mother that he was part Black Dutch. Since he was quite young at the time, he did not know if there was such a thing, or if she were merely teasing him. There's also a report of the expression being used to describe the runt of the family. Genealogist Bert P. von Coleman surmised Black Dutch is an Anglo slang expression which seems to have evolved from the Dutch slang usage of black or Schwartz. Black or what? Swart, swarty. Black is swarty. Swarty is black. Which is slang means not pure, second rate, undesirable, illegal. That means so-called black. The Dictionary of American Regional English refers an 1854 diary entry, strange curious statement, along down the center of my back is brown stripe like the stripe of a Black Dutchman's back. One such example of this theory about the term's negative connotation is found in the Atlanta newspaper account in 1913. The anonymous writer told the plight of a teenager at the hands of an abusive, negligent mother who was known by the name of Black Dutch. The mother was known by the name of Black Dutch. She was a little woman, unkept, tireless in her work, with a temper hardly human. She loved her boy. The girl she abused drove from home, accused falsely. The first time I ever saw the girl, the police had taken her to the station house. They had found her under a neighbor's house, shivering from cold and exposure. The Black Dutch, the child's mother, had in a fit of rage, threatened her life, and finally shut the door in her face. Many times threatened, I saw the girl on the streets late at night, wistfully looking into a motion picture place. All right, what are they talking about? So they're talking about the derogatory. It became a derogatory term. You know, Black Dutch. It's just like saying so-called black man, or the N-word. It was a derogatory term a lot of the times. Why? Why wouldn't people want to be considered Black Dutch? Why wouldn't a European be considered Black Dutch, huh? So it became a derogatory term. Let's see what's coming. It says German. Black Dutch is akin to Pennsylvania Dutch. So this is another reason this Black Dutch is being used. Remember, the word it says here that both the terms are reference to the word Deutsch, pronounced Deutsch, meaning German. Deutsch. That's how you say German. And Deutsch. German, Dutch, Black Dutch also meant Black German. And we know there was many Black swarthy Germans. We got the statement from Benjamin Franklin in the 1750s, letting us know not to Germanize America with these swarthy Germans. Let's just keep it Anglo-Saxon, he said. Let's keep it more white. Let's not colonize it with swarthy Germans or Germanize it. So again, Black Dutch also referred to the Black Germans. The Black, yes, so-called Negro Germans. The Black Dutch were also Germans. Wasn't just about Indians hiding. The mistake has arisen from the popular confusion between the terms Dutch and German, which are synonymous with many, noted Professor S.S. Haldeman of the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia in 1872. The Pennsylvania Dutch descended from German-speaking immigrants coming to America in the 17th and 18th centuries. Professor Haldeman called the Pennsylvania Dutch language a South German dialect corrupted or enriched by English words and idioms under a pure or modified pronunciation. As he further explained, their speech was found largely among the country's population and may be constantly heard in the county's towns of Easton on the Delaware Reading, on the Schuylkill, Allington, on the Lehigh, Harrisburg, on the Susquehanna, Lebanon, Lancaster, and York. Black Dutch is simply an expression, said a longtime resident of St. Louis, Missouri in 1982. As far as I know, this English language expression was native to St. Louis, as it means a Caucasian person of German origin whose complexion is swarthy. Okay, does that make sense to you? A Caucasian person of German origin whose complexion is swarthy. Okay, what did I tell you earlier? They're referring to Black Negro, so-called Negro Germans when they were saying Black Dutch too. Again, it wasn't just about Indians trying to hide so they wouldn't get relocated. That did happen, yes, but it wasn't always the case. We got to stop generalizing, because they're telling you straight up here. It says it's a Caucasian person of German origin whose complexion is swarthy. Swarthy. He's Caucasian, but he's swarthy. There were hundreds of these people around, and the phrase was in common use. Again, Black Dutch. How can you hide as a Black Dutch if it wasn't a common phrase at the time? Why was it a common phrase? Because it was an actual thing. Black Dutch, Black Germans, and Black Holland, Sephardic Jews, Moorish Muslims, they were so-called Black. And they were coming from Holland. They were being called Dutch. It was a common phrase in use. It was a common thing to see a Black Dutch or a Black German. It was a common thing. That's why people can hide under that. The expression, however, is not native to St. Louis. Minnie Papstein was born in Dramberg, Germany, now Poland, in 1888 and immigrated to the U.S. with her parents the following year. By the 1900s, the Papsteins settled in Will County, Illinois. 4 years later, she wedded German-born Frank Depperman in Kankakee, Illinois, and the couple had 7 children. Years later, she used the expression Black Dutch when referring to her daughter-in-law, the black-haired, fair-complexioned Clementine Hamilton, who had married Minnie's son in 1940. Due to divorce, Clementine was estranged from her children for many years, but her granddaughter Patty Browning eventually located and reunited with her. When Patty asked about her alleged Black Dutch descent, Clementine admitted she was unfamiliar with the term. Browning's genealogical research revealed no immediate Germanic ancestry in the Hamilton family. Minnie Papstein Depperman had disliked her daughter-in-law, and it's believed that labeling her a Black Dutch was intended as an insult. Okay. Evangelina Eva Steele was born in 1860 and raised in a farming community in Sullivan County, Pennsylvania, among German families with surnames such as Hussinger, Diefenbach, Morningstar. All right, Morningstar. That's a good one right there. So I believe a new shout out to a new breed. He explained the Morgenstar or Morgenstein, who became Morningstar. These were German families who took on Indian identities, and they started telling people that Morningstar was an Indian name, surname, when it was Morgenstern, something like that. All right, so right here is clearly telling us that they're German. The Morningstars are a German family. Merkel and Dice. She became the mistress of wealthy Robert Ray Hamilton, a member of the New York State Assembly, and then deceived him into marrying her after claiming she gave birth to his child in 1888. The baby, however, was purchased by her from a midwife. It was the child of German parents and was very dark, a newspaper reported. Again, this was a German child from German parents, and the newspaper at the time reported him to be very dark. This is a black Dutch baby. I can never love it, Eva said. I can't kiss it. I hate it. A fairer substitute was purchased to replace the dark complexioned child. You hear this? The deception was exposed after Eva stabbed a nurse who had discovered the truth. Whoa. Much love and respect. Upside in. Brotherhood of Blackheads and Livonia starting 14th century. Foreigners or question mark. Thanks for sharing. Lynn Morrow of the Center for Ozark Studies at Southwest Missouri State University in Springfield reported a case study of Black Dutch as slang. All right, so they go on to explain the slang used, why it was used. So we're getting a lot of different reasons, right, for the Black Dutch. Just to continue a little bit here, it says the Black Germans. Mr. Taffel of the 1st German Regiment from Cincinnati writes, from Beverly, Virginia, the houses we passed on the march were all empty of male inhabitants, who, as some of the remaining women openly admitted, had joined the Southern Army. We discovered what lies are being spread about us in the delightful way. The wife left behind as a secessionist tavern keeper assured our staff officers that the Black Dutch lived like cannibals and did not spare even women and children. When the lieutenant colonel pointed out the peacefully encamped soldiers and told her that these were the Black Dutch, she did not want to trust her eyes. Not a cherry had been picked from her tree. In gratitude for this, she told the colonel that this personal description was well known to the enemy and that he would be the first target of their bullets and his shirt sleeves or cuffs and white-brimmed white hat. McCook has been wearing a black hat and blue blouse ever since. All right, so I guess, they were trying to make this a bad thing, this bad term, a derogative term, the Black Dutch, and this is from that time. She was surprised to see they weren't cannibals. All right, so remember who else they were calling cannibals. In 1826, the Hampshire Gazette reprinted the Provincial Literary Cadet's harsh assessment of the Black Dutch of Pennsylvania, equating the term as high and low as social status rather than dialect. High or low social status. So a lot of the times it was used for social status. All right. Again, with the whitewashing and white pictures and white drawings. The Black Dutch. This is a term that stiff and supercilious aristocrats who hang upon and rally around the coalition applied to staunch Republican patriots of Pennsylvania. See, the truth is, when we start doing those videos, and I got a lot of videos coming, most of the Republicans in the South during the Civil War era were people of color. So naming them Black Dutch, I guess it would make sense to them at that time. As long as they had a hope of electing John Sargent and one of the 2 other coalition members of Congress, they bawled out lustily reaction in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's turning, John Binns says so, but since the signal defeat, nay, the complete overthrow of the whole coalition party in that patriotic state, they went their rage against its citizens by calling them the stupid Black Dutch. Immediately upon the receipt of the glorious intelligence from Pennsylvania, a prominent Adams man in Frederick expressed himself to the following effect. The Black Dutch of Pennsylvania are like a drove of bullocks. Where one leads, the rest follow. Such as the epithets and aspirations cast upon the honest, intelligent Germans and their descendants in Pennsylvania, all right? Black Dutch, Black Germans, because they refused to be sold to a coalition along with John Binns. Let the Germans of Maryland, who manfully support the cause of their brethren in Pennsylvania, think of this denunciation of the aristocrats, all right? So they go into a whole explanation Again, another way it was being used in Pennsylvania. Not all political connotations to Black Dutch were negative. All right, in 1886, J. Davis of Clyde County, Kansas, politically endorsed Fred Hand, also of that locality, whom Davis identified as Black Dutch. Yet he also praised another politician, F.W. Frollys, calling him White Dutch. Davis, however, did not explain either term. American Dictionary of Regional English vaguely cites Low German Plattdeutsch in 1939, reference to a Fox family known as Black Dutch. Pennsylvania, as far back as we can trace them, they are low, not all, small, and have black features. Black features. The use of low in this instance refers to the language, not social status. Among the Dutch-German border people do speak a dialect known as Plattdeutsch or Low German, says Raymond Matthews, but I cannot imagine the word Platt being confused with the English word black. However, among the Pennsylvania Dutch, B and P are interchangeable, such as the word platter being pronounced bladder or blacker. In 1886, when J.M. Steele mentioned the Germans of Erndale and Rowan counties in North Carolina, he said that they did not perhaps use the German language proper, but a dialect peculiar to the Black Dutch, as they were called. All right, so they're explaining that part right there. Okay, so I think we're gonna basically end it right here. I'm actually going to share that book. Let me just hold on. Just wanted to go ahead and be clear about the term Black Dutch. It's not a specific thing. I hope you guys understood what I was trying to show. I hope you guys understand that there was actually Black Dutch. I hope you guys understand that there was actually Black Germans who were also Black Dutch. So it's not just a thing about people hiding, but it did happen. Anu told me the stories of his family and how people had to, in those times, claim Black Dutch. And why did they have to claim Black Dutch? Why can't they claim Black Dutch? Because it was a common phrase. It was a common thing to see Black Dutch. You couldn't hide under that if it didn't exist. Right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. There's a lot more research to be done, of course, with this Black Dutch. We were basically on about page 20 of that book. It's about 57 pages, 56. Again, catch the rest of the book. Let me just go ahead and just bear with me 1 second. Just put on Bezo Breeze. All right, so I'm going to post the link for this book right now on the chat. If you guys are interested in getting this book, here it is. It's only $7.50. You can download the PDF yourself and finish it. I'm going to share this with my Patreons. Again, this was the search in search of the Black Dutch. Who's the Black Dutch? Just 1 second. Breeze 3000, let him know. Much love and respect, brother, for the beats. All right, so if you enjoy my content, you enjoy these videos, it takes a lot of research, a lot of time. You know, if you want to support this, you want to help me get these books, you know, it costs money to get these books. It took me 6, 7 months just to get this book and track down the person who wrote it, and he actually sent it to me. Again, I'm gonna post this on my Patreon for my patrons, so they don't have to pay for it. You know, if they want to enjoy it, I paid for it. You can just buy it yourself. If you don't want to become a Patreon, just want to let you know. Recently, I shared these 2 volumes. This is the Royal Book of Crest from Great Britain and Ireland. All right, and this is volume 2. Volume 2 has all the family crest, the images, and so you can get this if you become a patron. You can just download it and have it yourself. I have volume 1 and 2. Volume 1 is basically the etymologies of all the surnames. All right, so again, this is the family crest, and yes, you're gonna find so-called Negro families here, Negro crest. Let me just see if I can get you one example before we leave today. Look at the crescent moon. You already know what that means. All right, let me see. These are all animals. But as you can see, you can have this book if you go to my Patreon, become a patron, support me. I have a lot of great books there and things I've shared before. These are some more family crests. So we can get to some of the good ones here. All right, because we're talking about Black Europeans, and this a lot of the times this means this is like the corn first before it was turned into wheat. These crests, just showing us animals here. Well, you know what? It's in here. I showed you guys in my videos. Again, this is volume 2 of the Royal Book of Crests of Great Britain, Ireland, Dominion of Canada. A lot of so-called black family crest in there with the so-called black man, or what they want to try to say it's a slave, and in their crest. So you can see, you see your family history there. All right, so I hope you guys again enjoyed this. This is my Patreon. Again, if you want to support me, talk to me directly. Need some help with genealogy, just let me know. Contact me. Again, I try to serve my patrons first, because they they make the efforts to support me, so I'll support them. Again, you get a lot of good things if you become a patron here. A lot of great books here I share all the time. I'm about to share this one from today's video in here for my patrons, so you guys can have it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation, and well, my patrons will be able to read the rest of it if they like. If you have any family surnames you recognize. Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. It says started streaming about 3 hours ago, so yeah, it's been a while. It's been a long presentation. I'm getting tired. I'm getting out of here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the love and support, and I hope I didn't make anybody feel uncomfortable or anything. Again, I'm not here to create drama or beef or to get attacked, and people telling me I'm trying to destroy their research that they had for 3 years. The Akamak lady, she got a little upset at me. I don't know why, but I have nothing to do with this. I'm just reading history, and if you believe so that I'm wrong, you can do your genealogy live with me so everybody can see, or you can just do it privately with me if you want to see if it's right or wrong. It doesn't matter. I'll do it either way. So I appreciate everything, all the love, all the motivational support, all the great comments, to all my patrons and all my supporters. Much love and respect, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I got a lot of great videos coming. I'm gonna try to get some more videos before the month's over. The Washita Moors one, that's gonna be a presentation, a full presentation. I'm trying to really do and make it clear. What's the genealogy there, what's the history there, a more accurate, a more not generalized, doctrinated, remove the Malachi York and the Moorish and the science and all that other stuff that is just generalizations. Remove all the Hebrew stuff too, because there's a lot of it goes way back into talking about Adam and Eve and stuff. So we're trying to be more something we can actually research. It's not, we can't just read a book and say, well, we're the ancient ones and we're this and that. There's a real history here. All right, there's a real history here, and I hope you guys enjoy those videos that are coming up. We're gonna do it on the first Continental Congress. These first presidents, who they were, who are these famous people, who are these so-called famous colored people free blacks, free colored people that are we know in history. What's their genealogy? I got some great videos coming through. And apologies to Marone if I misread. Forgot that, I know who you are, man. I know you weren't saying that in bad intentions. I apologize. And Queen Ottawa, you're very welcome. Thank you for everything, all the support you always provide. Much love and respect to everybody who tuned in. All right. And we're just going to leave out with, let me see if we can find a good song from Basil Breeze. All right. Let us out with the easy breezy. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Much love and respect. Hawa. Yeah, much love and respect, everybody. Have a blessed night. Thanks for tuning in. 400 strong still, even after I was done. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate the support and the realness. Much love. Wow.